I thought that was the name of a restaurant. break to get more if we're here till 10:30 again.
Good evening. I'd like to call the February 1st, 2022 East Bay Township Planning Commission to order. And before we start our meeting, I'd like to have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Leslie, if we could have roll call.
Sure. Leonard.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Nemitz. Here. Ferguson.
Here.
Bartlett.
Here.
Adley.
Here.
Syke.
Here. Okay, we have an agenda for this evening's meeting presented for you. If there are any conflicts of interest, please identify those. If there aren't any changes to the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move to approve the agenda February 1, 2022.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to approve and a support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The agenda is approved. We have minutes from January 4th, 2022 in your packet. If you want to review those, if there's any changes or corrections. I'm not hearing anything. Anybody entertain a motion for approving?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 4th.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2022. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Minutes approved. This is, next item on the agenda is public comment, and we have several items on the agenda that are coming before the Planning Commission later on the agenda, and so what we would ask for this public comment here is if you could hold off for when we get to that actual agenda item. So if you have any public comment on any topic other than the agenda items, feel free to come to the podium right now and provide your name and address.
Question for clarification, will we be able to speak on growth matters?
Correct, yes. We'll deal with that at the agenda item.
So there will be an opportunity to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any comments. We'll close that public comment and move on to correspondence. We have some items on our desk. Could we review those, or?
I don't know what they are, so.
Okay. All right, Preston.
As you can expect, we received correspondence up into the last hour of today regarding an agenda item.
Sure.
Those have been uploaded to the system, but also printed off for your review as well for this evening. So you had a physical copy of it.
Okay.
And then I think you do have a copy of the January ZBA minutes that were emailed out just yesterday, maybe. Those on your desk, and then there is correspondence from Judy that was on your desk too, because I don't know if that got emailed out at Judy's request.
Okay. So it looks like the other items are related there's three other items. There's the question regarding the Township Engineer's environmental assessment recommendation, so we'll review that under GOREC. There's also this document. Are you familiar with this?
That came in with the other two that were related to GOREC.
Okay. All right.
These were emailed into the Planning Commission?
Some stuff came directly to me today. Some stuff
Okay.
went to the PLC as well, to you guys, but some of it came directly to me.
Okay.
From
Well, we have correspondence from Mr. Mansfield, and that was collected and disseminated by Leslie. And then I would have to refresh my memory after the whirlwind of today on what those are from. But
Okay.
that came in as one email.
Okay, all right,
Actually, I believe those would be from Mr. Slow, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Who's present in the audience.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Yep.
If
I'm
we'll-
happy to speak to any of those documents now, too. if you-
No, we just need to know, we're just referencing, we'll deal with those at the time when we get to that agenda item. Reports, Township Board report, Tracy.
Well, I don't know how appropriate this is, but I would just like to let you all know what an awesome job Preston did this weekend with our blight issue. Huge coordination. Not only him, but, you know, Beth also, our supervisor, had a lot to do with that, and, you know, really good, hard situation and unfortunate situation. So, but I just want you all to know what an awesome job he's done, and has worked a lot of hours on that. But other than that, at the township, that's like encompassed a lot of our efforts and time over the last few weeks. Also, Sue is gearing up for elections and the change of the voting precincts. We added a new precinct this year and all of that. So she and Holly are working on getting out new cards and all of that stuff. And taxes are due on the 14th, so come see me.
I'm not sure. Okay. If you could just, you're welcome to come in the room or outside room, but we just need the doorway open for fire purposes. Thank you. Okay, moving on, next reports, ZBA.
Yeah, you have the minutes of the last ZBA meeting in front of you, but just to summarize it, we had one variance request for a variance on Boardman. There was some confusion as exactly how big it was, so they went back and tabled it to get some better measurements, probably for the next ZBA meeting when they reappear. And then the second was for a curb cut variance of about 20, maybe 30 feet for the hotel complex that's being built on 31, and that was approved.
Okay. Thank you. Planning and Zoning Department, Preston, Leslie, any reports?
I would say it's already been discussed, that monopolized the last couple of weeks. for sure.
Okay, sure. Okay, moving on, next item is business before the Planning Commission. We have, first one, 9A is SPR 11-21, Special Land Use 5-21, Stellar Hospitality. We had a public hearing held on January 4th, 2022, and so now we're receiving an update on this application.
So I provided a memo in the packet that we haven't received anything additional from the applicant. They did go through the ZBA, as just explained. Friday, I believe, Friday or yesterday, we did receive updated plans. I haven't looked at them yet, but I would anticipate that being back in front of the Planning Commission for your March meeting, unless you have a special meeting some other time to deal with the applications.
No, I would assume it'd be a regular March meeting.
Good answer.
So there's no, because we haven't received any additional information, there's no action necessary to take on that one?
No action at this time, no.
Okay, do we need a motion to postpone, or do we just keep it, or should we,
I would
if it's on
make
our
a
agenda?
motion to postpone to
Okay.
next agenda.
For the Stellar Hospitality Special Land Use Permit application, I'd entertain a motion for that action. There's provision in the packet there.
I would make a motion to postpone SPR 11-21 SLU 5-21 Stellar Hospitality until the March meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone until the March meeting for the Stellar Hospitality application. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That item is moved to March. Okay, moving forward. Next item is site plan review 1-22, special land use 1-22, Raymond Farm Wedding Venue. We have it, this is an introduction and schedule of public hearing. Sarah, did you want to provide an overview?
Sure, so there, I did put a report in your packet of items that are either being, we have the information, there's a waiver requested, or information that we still need. I know the planning commission was out there tonight, so you can look at the site, so hopefully you'll be able to talk about a couple of those items. Most of the waivers requested are related to kind of landscaping issues and parking issues, being that it is kind of a rural, property and what they're looking to do, something for the planning commission to consider out there for those items. There's nothing really, I don't think, too outstanding as far as additional information. I think it's something they can throw on the plan, or if you say you're not interested in a waiver, then they can add that on before our next meeting.
Okay. We have the applicant here and the applicant's representative. If there's anything you wanted to say at this time, or you're welcome to come to the podium.
Yep, first, those that don't know me, I'm Shane Gamrat with Gordy Frazier. I'm representing the applicant, Sue Raymond. Just short and simple, because I know you guys got a lot on your plate tonight. We're trying to keep this as rural as possible. It's an existing historic property. We don't want to do a ton of site improvements out there. We just want to be able to use the existing barn as a wedding venue, select nights in the summer. And, to do that, we need to get the special land use permit, so that's why we're here. We kind of talked about everything out on site today and kind of what we're looking to do, minor improvements, if anything. So that's basically the gist of it, short and simple. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any questions for me while we're here or anything, so.
Anybody? I don't have any questions. Anybody? Okay.
Answer to the site.
Tracy?
Just kind of reiterating some of the things that we talked about at the site review, I guess. I would like to see some kind of screening in the parking area especially, just for the neighbors' sake. I know they agree, but people move and
Absolutely.
circumstances change, so I think that would be appropriate. And I know our ordinance talks about a fence, but I would agree, natural landscaping, some more pines, arborvitae. The deer love the arborvitae out there, so, so I guess I would look at that. We questioned how many events.
And again, we're not opposed, if there was a cap put on it as part of this, I think, we talked out there that, 4 to 5 to start was what she was looking to do, to see how it goes. And then if, it is a hit and, want more, then we can always come back and ask for that to be extended or.
Yeah, I think that needs to be part of the plan, that she's requesting. And then we talked about signage, and then some kind of lighting. I'm just concerned about people walking out after dark, out to the parking, because that's quite a distance. And concerned about that joint easement, because there can't be any parking on that
Right.
easement road, because then how are the homes back there going to get in and out, and emergency vehicles and things like that? So that was some of my concerns that I had.
Yeah, and I think, most of those we show on the plans, we show the parking area, and there's no intention to park in the middle of the road. Site lighting, we don't want to, throw a bunch of light poles up in the middle of the
Right, and she talked
neighborhood.
about solar.
Solar,
something.
we could do something, to kind of illuminate a
Even just
path.
Ground, yes, something,
As long as, the whole, like I said, the whole intent is to keep it as natural as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to, improve the whole site out there. So it's a beautiful property, so.
I saw on TV this weekend, somebody had lightning bugs in mason jars hanging, Some movie I was watching.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. I think this would meet section 234, our small venue, 300 or less, so we definitely want to make sure that, that is a condition. Also, I didn't see anything with waste dumpsters. Would we do the enclosure with our ordinance and make sure that meets our ordinance? Because I'm sure you're going to have waste after a wedding, so I would request that we look at
An enclosure.
the, 6-foot fence, et cetera, with spelled out in our ordinance, okay? I think we talked about section 702, the parking is within 300, it's right at 300, so we're in the ADA. The lighting would have to be dark sky compliant, I would assume? Okay, so, just be aware of that as well. There wouldn't be any off-street parking, right?
No.
No, just that
a
lot,
parking
just that
yeah,
lot,
grass
okay,
area.
all right. I think, and then the tent is out.
Yep, no.
Okay, because I was asking about that with dark sky, so the tent is out, so, okay, we're good on my part.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
So,
Okay.
just asking, so do we need to determine tonight whether a waiver is, where Sarah's got waiver requested? Do we need to determine that tonight, or that's for the next?
I would say at this point, we're just introducing, and then we'll do it at the next meeting when there's the public hearing and all that. That can be all part of conditions or part of the motion to take action. Would that make sense, Sarah? If we,
Other than it.
or should we provide that now as a way to,
Yeah, I don't think that you have to, a lot of these where the waiver was requested, we're even just talking about tonight, some of the screening and parking and those things. So as long as, nobody has anything really outstanding, I just wouldn't want them to come to the public hearing and then have you say, oh, you need to add this to the plan and we're
Sure.
not going to review it tonight. So,
Right.
I'm assuming everybody's read through the report and they're either comfortable after the discussion and the site visit, to head down that road.
yeah, I think,
Did we talk about, like, any noise mitigation, or we're thinking that because of where it's located, we could,
It does sit in quite a
Yeah.
bowl out there, it's
Yep.
got hills all around it, and then 3 miles right next to the property, so, there will be some noise, but I think most of it will be mitigated by the topography.
I guess I would like to see in the plan the hours, because she indicated at the site review that 10 o'clock and they'd be off-site by 11. I'd like to see that in here, so it's part of the record, so we have a, means of, I don't want to say policing it, but, for complaint reasons. Sorry, I'm just trying to go back to
okay, any other comments or questions from planning commissioners? Okay. So we'll want to,
would we have to have that deed also in the paperwork, because it's an easement on the road, half is owned by the, that would have to be recorded with the,
yeah,
because we've asked that before with applicants, that the,
I think it is recorded
it?
already, isn't it?
But yeah, it's already
Okay.
in private road.
All right.
We do have signatures from the two
all right,
homeowners stating
All right.
they're agreeing to it.
excellent.
I'd move to set a public hearing for our March Planning Commission meeting for SPR 1-22 and SUP 1-22. The Raymond Wedding Barn.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion to set the public hearing for this application for our March meeting. The support, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. See you next month. Okay, moving on, we have, next item is SPR 2-22, Special Land Use 2-22. This is for the Beachview Apartments, introduction and schedule of public hearing.
Did you ask for public comment for that agenda item?
No, I did not.
I don't know if you just, because we were going to take public comment for each item.
Yes, right. So let me back up then. Did anybody have public comment on the Raymond Farm Wedding Venue application that was introduced and we just scheduled a public hearing for? We did not have anybody public at the on-site meeting this afternoon when we were there. So, any comments? Okay. So moving on then to SPR 2-22, Special Land Use 2-22, Beachview Apartments, introduction and schedule of public hearing.
So you were also out there today to visit the site and get some more information about it. This one's kind of similar to the last application. I mean, it's a different use. This is for, multifamily dwelling unit, but they have just a couple of items that we either haven't received or need to be provided, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to, add that additional information on the site plan prior to the public hearing.
Okay. Do you have the applicant here? Justin, if you want to make any comments?
Good evening, thank you. We've got a project that we're looking to add a small apartment building in the corridor of US 31 North. It's a .66 acre parcel, which is landlocked in some ways that deems it unusable for a lot of other reasons. So we felt that housing was a great opportunity in that corridor for all of the businesses. It is adjacent to two other entities that people will be sleeping, so quiet neighbors all the way through. So that use seems to fit very well. The project is a 3-story unit that would be a total of 12 units, and each apartment would be 3 bedrooms. We've got some updates based on some of the packet reviews that we've received, including a fire hydrant addition, the added cruise lane size. So those have been modified. We have those here already. I think we've maybe just have a couple of points of clarification that we want to make sure that we can address in the next couple of days and be ready for the public comment next month. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments?
So you have 18 parking spaces, right? With one being ADA, so 17 for the apartments, and we kind of chatted about those, right? Okay. All the lighting, dark sky to compliant, okay. Any signage? I think you did say signage, right? 20-foot by,
It's one of those last things that will fit in based on curbs and roads and landscape needs, and
Okay.
it's the easiest thing to place.
so you'll work with them to meet section 215 of our ordinance then?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Where was it? Did I miss it on, because it was kind of small on my thing, and my computer kept jumping around. Where's your dumpster enclosure too?
I believe that's
But did I have?
two-thirds of the way up on the west side of the parking lot.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
There's specs on it.
Yeah,
It would be
I saw the specs, but I didn't see where it was on the site, and I should have asked you when I was out there, so I apologize for that, Justin.
It's on the state park side, right?
Yeah,
It
okay.
is.
Yeah, on L 1.1, when you come
Okay.
in the driveway, there's a square right there on the left-hand side. That's where the dumpster is.
And we talked about trying to save some of the oaks and trees
Absolutely.
out there. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, I know that they, snow removal, I know that was mentioned in there, that it might be a little difficult. Do you think you have a okay plan to push that
Sure.
someplace over? Are you going to push it toward the state park, or where are you going to push it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Fred Campbell, 225 East 16th Street. The original plan that was submitted was revised. The size of the retention pond got increased to accommodate the wade trim
Okay.
comments. We didn't receive the wade trim comments until after we had submitted for the second submission.
Okay.
So the documents that we'd like to submit tomorrow or the next day basically pick everything up. But one of the questions to the board tonight is, do you want us to respond to the wade trim letter specifically and submit the revised drawings to them? Or how do you want to approach that?
Yeah, I mean, you should submit, you can just email Preston and myself, and we'll forward them on to the engineer,
Yeah.
so that they can revise their review letter.
Because a lot of the issues are basically issues that soil erosion is going to require it before they issue the permits.
Okay.
DPW will require it before they issue sewer and water. So I'm happy to do it, I
No,
just
no,
didn't know
that's-
where it was.
That's fine. The chain link fence that's in that back area that separates to that other kind of log cabin that is not used or occupied right now, would you be making that more of a private, did we ask you to do a privacy fence instead of chain link? What did we ask you? I thought, no?
No, it wasn't
If-
mentioned there. We could probably add some green buffer,
Oh, okay,
not a fence.
okay.
If you look at
Just
the
a-
landscape plan, you'll see where there's significant vegetation added to that south.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know, because I know Wade Trim asked about the chain link or something to that. And then the only other thing, I don't know, and maybe we could get a little feedback from everybody on that. I know that it's on the Parkway, and I know especially John has been looking at that for years, and so, I mean, I hate to say this, but we've been trying to move the parking. I don't know if we want parking in the front, what were we talking about, moving it in the back, but I know that when I look at the landscape, there's less trees in the front, so it's kind of a torn, a tough situation to drive down the parkway and see parking lots. And I think that was one of the things we kind of looked at one time. The other thing is, this being on the, and I know that Mr. Morty talked about making the inside nicer than the outside, but if we could maybe dress up some of the entrances, because we are on the Parkway, and I know we've been working really hard to improve the site, et cetera. So, and I know that's tough, especially in this day and age with building materials being so expensive. So thank you very much for working with us on those things. So you want to talk about your Parkway stuff?
Well, the interesting thing when you're out on this site is when we were back, so we pulled into the site and towards the back end, you can hear the noise of the road traffic, and understanding these are residential units, and it's a very unique parcel, being kind of wedged between a really long blank wall that's the existing hotel to the east, and then you got the state park. As you get closer to that part, to the highway, you could definitely hear the noise elevated quite a bit. I think in this case, but based on the use, and yeah, ideally, you want something that's going to maybe have the building towards the front, but it's a tight spot, and I think if, there's landscaping, and as long as that landscaping is done right, I think it can provide, it's a short gap, I guess, between the hotel and the state park. Because I agree, I mean, ideally, you don't want a lot of parking lots all up and down the street. You kind of want to provide a different landscape in view, but I think in this particular case, knowing that it's residential probably works out a little bit better than if it were to be. And I don't think you could do it, I guess you could see maybe having it half and half or something like that, and bringing it more towards in line with that hotel building, but I don't know, it's a really tight spot.
It is tight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to go back to this, but on page 153, Wade Trim talked about the project proposes asphalt paving off this site and onto the neighbor's parcel. Is that been rectified? Or was that a mistake?
That's a shared easement.
Okay, I know, so I wasn't sure what that was.
So that is one of our questions this evening.
Okay.
The original submission had the parking about 5 foot off of the easement. In response to the fire marshal's letter, the fire marshal was looking for a fire access on that easement. So the revised drawings basically widen the easement out to accommodate fire trucks between our proposed complex and the hotel. As a result of that, we could move the parking farther to the east, and then we would lose some of the green space. So we're walking that fine line of trying to maintain the green space. And I haven't found anything in the ordinance that says that we can't do what we're doing. The one section refers to the ability to maintain the drive access and the parking access. So one of the solutions would be to put parking barriers in the little 5-foot blocks, and that would last one winter, and then we wouldn't have parking blocks anymore. But I didn't see anything in the ordinance that said we had to maintain a 5-foot buffer between the parking and.
I think that's a road commission. That's a road commission thing. So thank you for clarifying that, because I saw that from Wade Trim, and I just wasn't sure if that was totally accurate.
So you're paving the whole easement and then it just continues right into the parking lot?
Yes.
So that means
They-
there's one big tree right on the edge of the easement. It's going to be gone, yeah.
If you look at the L1 sheet.
Yeah, I was just looking at it here.
You'll see where there's a
18-inch
note for every tree, and I believe there are 16 major trees that are being saved. I think I don't even want to state a number of how many are coming out.
16 or 15?
Most of the ones that are coming out as a result of the building, the parking. There's 1 or 2 that come out because of the retention basin. Once you expose the roots, you're not going to save the trees.
Right.
I guess I would have concerns about paving the whole easement right into parking, because how do you keep people out of the easement for access and not parking there as soon as there's not a parking space that looks like a big parking lot to get through there?
Yeah, I would agree. As it's proposed right now, what it's going to look like is just 2 driveways, one for this parcel and then one for the easement coming off the highway, and then that area is just one big parking lot. It's going to be striped, but it's going to have the appearance of one solid parking lot, and then you're going to see that one drive going to the back.
Would you entertain a fence?
So it'd basically be a fence with I don't know. I'm not sure.
Couldn't you just use the access easement as your access and move the parking, flip the parking over the other side? Because you wouldn't have the driveway in. Just use the access easement as your entrance in to the site instead of putting your own curb cut in.
It's an existing curb cut. We're not anywhere.
Well, they're taking it out. I mean, they're so
I
close
don't
together,
know.
you could have your driveway coming off the access easement.
I don't know if fire would let them do
Oh,
that.
they'd have to.
2 points.
I would assume the fire department wouldn't want that, but I don't know.
I'd look into that.
Yeah.
That would make a lot, and then you don't have that maneuvering over on the west side of the property. You could shift your parking over that way and use the easement as your main drive, free it up. I mean, it wouldn't have that kind of loop, but it might, I'm not sure what the configuration would be, but it'd give you a lot more flexibility in the design if you could just use that easement curb cut as your main drive. I don't know what Metro Fire would say, but it's worth it.
Talk to Kathy and find out.
Yeah, that would give you then the ability to probably come up with a better design. Any other comments or questions?
Can I have a quick clarification on the tree conversation that was at the site? Are there
Sure.
additional trees that aren't marked on the site plan that they agreed to save, or is it the same trees that are on the site plan already? Because it'd be important for us to make sure we know which trees are going to be saved.
We didn't have a specific.
We didn't specific, we pointed out some in the back by the chain link fence that look like they're they're heritage trees. Now, I know there was one way back, but is that your easement that's still on those properties that are abandoned? You know, that big one that I think you're talking about over the parking?
That was towards the front.
Okay, oh, toward the front,
Definitely on
okay.
their
So
property.
where the stake was, is that where your property ends and the easement ends? Okay, so you wouldn't be doing anything to the south? Okay, thank you. So we just talked about the big ones. There's a couple big pines in the back that they were going to try because the building, I think John pointed out that there's setbacks from that, and they would try to save those. But there wasn't, go ahead.
And as just a point of conversation, I was on the tree committee with Claire and Leslie, so we intend to preserve as many trees as we possibly can. We understand the importance of that heritage, and we want to continue to see it look the same in 100 years.
Yeah, I think as it's proposed, pretty much the site's going to be cleared, with the exception of those that are following along the parcel lines to the south and to the west.
Right.
So I think in the nature of what's being proposed is kind of building out that whole site. So, I mean, you know, maybe if there was some ability to look at the reconfiguration of that parking lot, maybe there could be something that could be saved there, but from what I'm seeing right now, I don't think there's going to be anything other than what's at the property lines.
And then Justin and I also talked about the landscape thing, that we would try to really keep it native and maybe look at those oriental grasses, because a lot of states are putting those on, we're not on the endangered list yet, but I'm sure they will be. But if we could look to do that, that would be great on your landscaping list. And there is that with Grand Traverse County, that list, and then we talked about Go Beyond Beauty and stuff. So thank you for cooperating with that.
Do we want to make a recommendation in terms of if they can't come to some type of agreement with relocation of that entrance drive with like some type of screening or delineation? Because I'd hate to have them come back and then we do the same thing again in a month. I mean, with some type of direction. Because really the goal here is to delineate the two parcels, right? So if a truck comes in, they know which way to flow and not have people be parked where a safety
Right.
vehicle's going to enter and exit. I mean, as much as I'd love to see some landscaping there, it's going to be a sea of asphalt anyway, so I don't know if you could physically fit it with the detention pond being to the west there. It just doesn't look like you have any room. I like the idea of the fence, at least it provides some visual barrier between the two. I mean, I could get on board with that, so long as it's, I think through that area, something that blends in, something that's already existing in that corridor would be nice, you know, maybe not an 8-foot solid wall. But a split rail, something would probably be all right.
I mean, you'll have to see how long it lasts
Right.
Yeah, with the plow.
with the
But
cars on
aren't
both sides.
some of the spaces, aren't they accessed off the easement? So it's really, if there was any type of a fence, it would only be for about half of those spaces. Because, yeah,
Yeah, just
Okay.
that northern part.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they can use the existing cut, I think it's a great idea. If they can do that, save you a little bit of monkeying around on 31. And maybe open up some more for stormwater management to move some of that as well, right? So I think that's a great conversation, but I just didn't want you to come back in a month and.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I didn't realize some of that parking is coming off of the easement. So that's like really going to be tough.
You know, and I may have to look in the ordinance too, because a lot of times we talk about not backing, you have to back into a maneuvering lane, not backing into a road of a parking space. So I'm gonna have to double check the ordinance about that too.
I looked at the ordinance with regards to parking and could not find anything that addressed that issue.
There isn't anything.
I have it here if you want to look at it,
No, I know.
but I couldn't find anything.
There isn't anything.
Yeah. So the fence is only going to be the first little bit of the parking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots, maybe? Guess that would give them an idea that you can't park there. I mean, I don't know.
There's always signs.
Is a sidewalk that's at the north side of the building and the east side of the building that goes along, is that sidewalk going to be flush with the pavement next to it, or is it going to have a raised curb there?
It'll probably end up with a raised curb.
Okay.
Last question on the building, and maybe this could help, is just management of the units themselves. Is that going to be on site or will it be someone that's off site? Just curious.
Be across the street.
Oh, perfect. I'm just thinking if there's a way to kind of have that relationship between residents there and some type of management for education purposes, that this is something you'd like to address in the future or maintain, like don't take out our fence, there will be a fee associated with it. That could probably go a long way. Maybe alleviate some of our headache too. So maybe having some type of just addition to the application to clarify what that looks like for purposes of the file could be awesome to provide to Sarah or staff or whomever, so then we can kind of have that built in.
Thank you.
Just one question. If you change everything around, because currently you have an agreement with the hotel on that road, or that, would that change your agreement in any way?
Not in our intent, no. We would both be, I mean, it's a fire lane.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be used for both parcels at this point.
Okay. I'm just curious whether or not, with increased traffic, would they have to change the agreement, but okay, thanks.
What it's going to come down to is the fire marshal is going to say, yes, you have enough room for us to come in to fight the fire and get out. Familiar with the Brookside Apartments on South Airport, they had us do a hammerhead to allow them to come in and negotiate and get back out. So I'm going to guess that they're going to want the similar thing here, and I'm going to guess they're going to prefer the in and out. But I will talk to Kathy and find out.
Okay.
Sarah, have you seen that easement? Do you have a copy of that easement? Have you seen it?
Like a legal description or something for it?
Yeah, or whatever if there's an agreement.
But I can try to. track
Yeah,
down our-
if that's something that we could see, just to double check.
It should be in there.
Okay,
I think it was,
was it?
yeah.
All right, maybe I
It was
missed it.
long, though.
Well, there's
Not 200 pages.
Yeah.
no, not
Yeah,
this,
look at it.
It was long, but.
There's the master deed, are you saying it's
Yeah.
in that?
I thought that was for Stellar.
What is that?
No, our packet got messed up, and I thought it was at first, too.
Uh,
So, yeah, we might need
If it is, what page is it on?
to.
But the
Is it the 161?
161.
Yeah, it talks
That's
about
referencing
condominium.
Stellar Hospitality, US Highway 31 Hospitality and Retail
Yeah,
Condominium. So I
that's-
thought that
yeah.
was for the hotels. So I just kind of took that rest of that part and just ignored it for pertaining to this.
Oh, yeah, that was Stellar's was in there.
Yeah. I just kind of curious just to see, just so that, because it, particularly if we get into seeing if you guys would use that as your main driveway entrance, just want to make sure that it's working, because it looks like that's actually, based on the map, that's actually on the parcel of the hotel, and most likely the easement allows for you to have access on that, but it looks like that's on their actual parcel.
For the hotel.
Yeah, we can look for some more documentation.
Yeah, okay, cool.
About management.
Any other comments or questions for the applicants, or you guys some?
Could I ask three little questions? So the particular zoning that we're in, the dwelling density calculation is not applicable. On the original completeness review, Sarah said it wasn't applicable. On the second one coming back, it says, please calculate. The zoning ordinance says it's not applicable for the RB district. So is that something that you want, or is it not applicable?
So he's talking about item number 8. It's on page 123 in your packet, and that's one of the items for a site plan review that's required to be on your site plan. So that specific district says there's no density, but
Right.
the site plan says you have to tell us what the density is.
Okay, gotcha.
That's what he's asking about, if you want him to put it on the site plan or not.
I think it would be helpful, but I don't know if this necessarily pertains to this, because we're in the district that we're in. But I think it would be helpful to have that.
Okay. In that same vein, if you look at sheet L1, middle of the page, there is calculations for the open space and calculations for the woody vegetation. And Sarah's asking for a plan that delineates that. Are we good with the numbers, or do you actually want a drawing that shows?
I'd like to see that, so that way we can double-check those numbers, just to make sure. So, yeah, it'd be helpful.
And the lighting details, we put the pole in, we didn't put the two luminaires on it, but the photometrics that are in the packet are for the two luminaires that didn't get put in. So the revised drawing will show fixture C, which has the designation of the luminaires, but the photometrics won't change, because the photometrics were calculated with C fixtures.
When I think that there's some issue, though, with the photometrics being too bright at the property lines.
We're less than 1.0.
Well, you've got, these are either 3s or 5s. I think they were 5s when I zoomed in on them, at the property line right out in front of the building.
Those are 1.0, 1.04, 1.0, 0.4, and everything, basically, if you go down the line next to the hotel, it's 0.01, 0.0, or 0.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.7, 1.0, 0.7, 0.4, 0.3, 0.4, 0.7, 1.0, 0.7, 0.4, 0.2.
I'm talking about at the property line here.
Yeah, it's right outside your door.
Yeah.
It's right on the sidewalk, is the property line.
What you're saying is I have to take it to the property line and not include the easement?
Well, because technically, that you have an easement there, but that is actually the property of the hotel. I mean, that's how, the boundaries, the survey on all the site plans, so and I'm not sure if there's, I mean,
We could put a smaller fixture in. The fixtures that are along that wall are wall-mounted, and they're very small.
okay.
Just change them to a much smaller, to get a much smaller, smaller luminaire on that side.
Yeah, I imagine the zoning ordinance doesn't anticipate this type of situation. That's what we're running into, but I don't know how to resolve that. I don't know. But I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, the ordinance doesn't really anticipate it. The only option would be some sort of a variance from the ZBA.
We can provide a much smaller fixture.
Can you see how that would work? And if, I guess we'll go with it at that, unless there's some issues with that, if it doesn't work or something like that. But it'd probably be easiest to go that route, to see if they can do a better fixture.
I'm confident we can do it.
Okay. All right, any other comments, questions? Okay. Before we make a motion on this, I'd like to entertain any comments from the public. If you want to have any, this is regarding the Beachview apartment proposal. This is on US 31 and the east, basically kind of the east side of the state park. Okay, we're going to be having a public hearing on it anyways. So if there's no other comment, I'd entertain a motion to take action on this to schedule a public hearing for next month.
We move to schedule a public hearing for SPR 2-22 and SLU 2-22 Beachview House Apartments for our March regular planning commission meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion to schedule a public hearing and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to schedule that for next month. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Next item is SPR 12-21, Special Land Use 4-21, GO-REC Plan Unit Development. Public hearing was held on December 16th, 2021. This is for update, discussion, and possible action. Obviously, a lot of people are here interested. What I'd like to do is first is to hear from staff, then hear from the applicant, and then at some point here, we can open it up for some comments from the public, because I know a lot of people here want to make public comment. When we get to that section, I just wanted you to know that we're going to hold you tight to that, definitely for the 3-minute requirement. And this is not a public hearing. This is, we're trying to take action on this, and so that's the priority here. But we are open to hearing from you at that point. But at this point, what I'd like to do again is hear from staff first, and then we can also talk with the applicant.
So in your packet, you did get some additional information from the applicant, and then there is a letter that was from Wade Trim. I noticed in my packet, it doesn't have the letterhead on it, so when you first look at it, Wade Trim's letter starts on page 250 of your packet. And Brian Sousa went through and kind of reviewed it based on the Lakes District and your conversation at your last Planning Commission meeting. So there are a couple of items that are still outstanding on that he's working through with the applicant. So I don't think tonight you're going to be able to make a decision on this since this is outstanding. But I would encourage you to, have some good discussion about it. I don't think the Planning Commission's really had an opportunity to kind of talk about things and maybe look at even some of the standards or findings and talk about ones you don't agree with, or maybe you need more information to be able to determine that it's met, to try to give some guidance to the applicant related to, the standards and what you're making a decision on. That would be my suggestion anyways, is, to try to facilitate that conversation.
Okay. And we did receive this item on our desks. You may not have a copy of this. It's questions regarding the township engineer's environmental assessment recommendations. Did this come from the applicant, or was this something else that somebody submitted?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. I don't know.
We sent that in.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. So, Sarah, on your report and comments that you were making, let me flip to that page.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't too many changes in my report. I mean, I updated the information we had available, but it's kind of was a quick turnaround, and then because we didn't have the engineer, we just had their report, they haven't finalized it at all, so I didn't really go through and update even, the findings, with it since we're still waiting on some of the information. I did take out, anything that was in that engineer's report, instead of saying waiver requested or yes or no, I just took out all those to let the engineer answer those instead of, me or us answering that until we get that engineer report back.
Okay. Did anybody have any comments or questions for staff?
Has the applicant had time to have a look at this letter from the engineer and make responses to it?
They've started working on it. They did get a copy of it when,
Okay.
when I received it, and then, I believe Brian and the applicant's going back and forth through some of the items.
Okay, I was gonna say, it's like a week ago, so.
Right. Yeah, because I don't know how that worked, we had the
Yep.
meeting, and then all of a sudden we had another meeting, so
Yep.
it didn't seem like there was a lot of time there.
Yep.
But I did provide on page, it's 236 of your packet, there were just a couple of items that the planning commission requested more information on, describing the events in more detail, the scheduling of the events, a full-size access management plan, and then the environmental assessment review by the engineer. So they did provide that additional information, the details, more about the events for you, and they can speak to that if you'd like. The full-size access management plan, we did receive that, although I don't know, did that end up in your packet, a full-size emergency access plan, or just the,
Emergency access plan?
yeah?
No.
Or not emergency, the access management plan. You were talking about it only having a portion of the site, and you
Yeah, I
wanted to
think
see the whole site?
Yeah, it's in there.
That's in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I have a question about the engineer's report. What did he receive the applicant's January 4th updated PUD that we saw, or the one from December 16th? Which report did he receive?
He received the narrative that was from the December meeting.
Okay, so he needs the update then.
So that's what, our conversation
Okay.
between you and I happened after this report came out,
Okay.
when you had asked
Right.
about that. So
And
yeah.
then he'll be getting the fire department report as
Yes.
well, and then the conservation monitoring report?
He did have the conservation monitoring report.
Okay. All right,
So,
okay. I just wanted to make sure that which one he had, because it was hard to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions with staff?
Not right now,
Okay, all right,
at some point.
all right. If we could have the applicant come forward and provide us with an update on, we do have the items here that were presented. Maybe if you could just review those.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through high level. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody again. I guess the first thing is, if you look at the last page of the application that has the new table, that really, kind of boils down a lot of what we heard from both the public and from, the planning commission about better defining and maybe scaling back, some of the events and the numbers and whatnot. So I just want to direct your attention to that.
it's page 240 of your packet.
Thank you.
And I'm going to let Sarah speak to the details. I'm just want to give you kind of some high-level stuff. The gun ranges, we removed that from our request, even though it was grandfathered in. We just felt that, based on what our hope is to use the property for, passive public recreation, people walking and hiking and snowshoeing and things, it would be unsettling, I think, for folks to hear, gunshots close by. And it also, since the DNR built the really nice new range off Supply Road, there really isn't a need. There's no demonstrable need to have that there. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't provide like pavilion space or space in the dining lodge, for like indoor classroom kind of stuff for hunter safety and things like that, but we just won't be doing any firearm training at all, in terms of the shooting. Let's see, yeah, so we got the township engineer's report last Monday. We dove right into it. There's basically 7 items that looked like that they still needed some additional information on. We got right to work on them. We're working with consultants and engineers now to address, all those issues. We're working with Otwell Mobby on a spill plan for the hazardous materials that are stored in our maintenance building, basically, like some gasoline and that type of thing for the maintenance equipment. We reached out and had some good conversations with a noise consultant, somebody that actually specializes in doing noise for large events and also has all the measuring equipment. And there was quite a bit he had some good questions that we then forwarded on to Wade Trim. We just got Wade Trim's response back yesterday or the day before that to provide him with some more direction as to how to conduct that noise analysis. So I think I've been playing phone tag now with the consultant. So we're hoping that we'll be able to get that work underway right away, and have the results back, by the next meeting. There was also some communication that we just received yesterday from the health department as well as an outcome of, the engineer's report asking us to get more information from the health department. So we're working with our engineers to, determine what we need to do to get things up to code and be compliant on all that. So that's where we're at. I think as Sarah noted, we'd love it if the planning commission, could kind of begin to move through some of these standards to see if there's other, if any other items, that need to be addressed that aren't yet, identified through the engineer's report, that are outstanding, so that we can, work on those and get you what you need to make an informed decision. So that's all. And unless you have any questions, I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Evening, Sarah Keever, Northview 22. Just to reiterate what we had included in your packet based on what was discussed last month, I do want to go to that addendum 2.0 that we did submit. That was in a result of what we had the conversation of last month. One of those items was how to have a calendar, how the township can know what is going on. And so one of the, that is included in your packet, it's written in there, is that the calendar will be maintained at all times, and account will be made for the township's use. They can log in and they can see that calendar. So any event that would be scheduled for over 100 people would be accessible to be viewed by the township staff. And in that, I'll go into the events and how we broke it down, but further in there is just a classification, a better identification of the mid-size and large-size events, how they're going to be held. That this is not going to be, mid-size events are not going to be held concurrently with large-size events. Transient activity permits, those are separate. That's a separate category. That's something we have to come back and ask the township staff to review. But again, those will not be held in concurrently with a mid or large-size event. No more than one large-size event would be held at the time. When we're proposing these on the schedule of event size, that does indicate that only one large event would be held at that time. Just further clarification, how parking is handled. Parking lots are located throughout the site, as we know. We're directing most traffic, most attendees to the main parking lot. But if that main parking lot is full at the time for an event, an activity, whatever it may be, there is overflow near the Welcome Center for your day users. So there's the ability for them to locate there, and that will be directed by staff. Event manager would be required on site to handle any incoming traffic at that time. Going through first the list, we've already discussed, Matt has already brought up, but just to go through the line by line in this addendum is the gun ranges. We did take into consideration, and that has been removed from the application. And before we had a further review and feedback from the township engineer, we did upgrade and emphasize noise management. And so that's in your packet. That's our lease agreement with the events and how the noise is going to be handled and managed between GoRec and the lease, those that are leasing it. So when we go into, the next page is the events, and we attempted to break it down a little bit further, just to take out any of the question on the numbers, because we seem to be going around and wanted to verify. You really won't see much changes. The general day use has not changed. The classes and small events, we're still capped at 30, but we're bracketing it. That's an example of things that would happen possibly on a daily basis, possibly 1 to 30 people at a time. And those examples of this are also listed, and I'm going to get into some of the examples a little bit later, but examples of what those would be occurring on a daily basis. Then we broke it up further. This still is capped, the mid-size events. Those are capped at 100. That was, as we had originally proposed, 50 a year. But that designates, it's just further designating anything from 30 to 100 people would be considered a mid-size event. The large size event is the category that we have discussed in the past. That has changed. That has changed since our previous application. That is now designated as guests to the site between 100 and 420. That 420 number is originated from the occupancy of Besser Lodge to give a data point to be able to define where we come up with these numbers. As we've made clear before, this 500-acre parcel has capacity for a lot more than that. And those 420 people could be spaced out in different locations. But using the Besser Lodge as the driving factor of what our occupancy is, we've limited it to 420. We've also reduced the frequency of these. We're limiting to 20 a year and keeping the weddings capped 12 of those 20 for the year. A lot of the examples, I know that we talked about this in the past, and so we've tried to itemize some of the examples and given you ideas. These events, all of those that have asterisks in your packet, these are events that have happened in the past. We've also since then, or on the ongoing discussions that have come up originally for over a year, there's been a lot of verification and a lot of research into what has been used. And if I can, I'm going to pass out, and I don't know if I have enough copies, but I'm going to pass out, and you can use these, and I will also email them for your next, if we're on the agenda for next month, I will email them to you as well. But in here is, when they were originally looking at this, what is grandfathered, what wasn't grandfathered. I'd assumed that you all had received a copy, so I apologize. But in here is a description from our attorney, the attorney representing GoRec, listing all the events that had happened in the recent years that have been documented. And also we have 2 affidavits from users in this area stating what has been used over the years, indicating that this is an example. So I'm going to pass these around. I think I might need a couple copies.
One thing I want to speak to is the 2 users that she notes. One was the caretaker and an employee at GoRec for a number of years, Cliff Wagner. And then the other affidavit is by Pat Parker, who has been associated with the Boy Scout property for decades, really. I think his time there dates back into the 70s. So they weren't just 2 users. They were both folks who had intimate, deep, and longstanding knowledge of the camp.
The other item that you will find in your packet, I hope, is we have gone and discussed traffic. Is it necessary for a traffic impact study to be done on this property? It's been discussed, and so we reached out to an independent engineer with that very question. What would they do? What would they consider? And what is it necessary for something of this intensity to require a traffic impact assessment? So in your packet is a letter from this engineer, professional engineer, reviewing our current application. It is that updated application that you have in front of you, Addendum 2.0. Using that information, he has provided a letter for you to review indicating how many trips he would expect this camp to generate. And his final conclusion in his letter does indicate that it did not seem it was necessary to require a full traffic impact study for this size of operation. So that has been included in your review. Certainly, we can answer any questions you may have on that to the best of our ability. I hope that that would provide some clarification regarding the traffic in this.
Is that on 248?
It is 248. It's missing the letterhead. I think Adobe helped us with that. But we can send them out separate to you so that you have it with the letterhead on it.
It's the signatures there.
You did get it in your packet? You do have it? Okay, thank you.
Yep, it was page 248 of the packet.
Got it. So that has been, that is included in for your review as well. And yes, as Matt has said, there is a couple outstanding items that we're working with Wade Trim on. One of them, the Metro Fire, we have already had a review completed back, I believe it was in December. Metro Fire has been out to the site. I think we've indicated that previously, but we will make sure that Wade Trim gets a copy of that review as well. And certainly can be provided to you guys if you need it. I believe that's the update from last month. Certainly entertain any questions, but if I turn it back over to you at this time.
Okay, thank you for the information. I think the information on the events was very helpful, gives us a better illustration of what you're talking about in consistent range of activities that are being proposed. Anybody have any questions or comments for the applicant on the information that we received, the supplemental information?
Just one, actually, on the agreement, the event agreement. I mean, this, in the event agreement, this was pretty concise, except I noticed that in the our page 243, item I, you still have providing facilities, bunk boards, main pavilion, then you have rifle range. You may want to strike those.
Very good note. We will make sure that that's.
Yeah, rifle range and shotgun range, they need to be probably taking out.
We'll strike those.
You also, in providing that same item I, you may want to include the fact that you're going to be providing the firewood.
We can do that. I believe there is I thought it was in the agreement, but if there isn't, I can make sure that that is noted in there.
Yeah, the other thing, under item, I guess be paragraph 8, item B would be a good place to insert the requirement of the boat cleaning, or make it as a standalone article. It's not, there's nothing in there about cleaning of the boats.
That should be, I think that would be reasonable as well.
And one question I did not see, and I'm assuming that you would not permit fireworks.
I think that is a safe statement. We did not include that into our application. I think that's a safe statement to say we would not allow fireworks.
Yeah, I'd make that
Well,
pretty,
there's a township ordinance that
right.
includes you from doing it except for
Right.
case.
I understand, but it's, if this is going to be signed by anybody using it, you probably want to have that particular item in there, too.
I think that's fair, certainly.
I think on that same note, I didn't see in Mr. Wendling's note or in any of the historical thing, anything about a zip line. And on K, you mentioned a zip line. So was that a historical use? It wasn't mentioned in any of your thing. Leslie, you sent a letter on in May, and there was also one by Mr. Wendling that didn't mention that, so I don't think that was
I
a...
don't believe that's in our,
Okay,
request
so we'll take
this
that
evening.
out. Just on those notes. But we can. You want- are we going in order?
Did I see anything in tied to the events with hours of operation or just kind of general guidelines? Maybe I just missed it, but did you guys see that anywhere? Hours, like
It was originally in the application.
Yeah.
outlining? Okay.
You mean in terms of actual event times? There was
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is in your original application.
I think,
10 PM.
It was capped
yeah,
at 10
well, there was,
PM. Yes, for sure.
there was on the time, or like quiet time, I think it was 10 AM to 10 PM is active, and then in between that,
Yeah, I think it
or something
was
like that.
10 to 8, 10 PM to 8 AM.
Okay. 10 PM.
So hours, 8 AM to 10 PM, all music acoustic or amplified to cease by 10 PM. Quiet hours of the camp are also from 10 PM to 8 AM, so this is conducive to both functions. That is on page 11 of your original application.
Yeah.
Everything to cease by 10 PM, quiet hours.
Are we going in order, or
No.
how do you want to do it?
All right.
You know, I do.
I mean,
And-
not yet.
Just one thing, with this agreement, this would be something signed at what level? What number of events would you require this agreement to be signed? I mean,
I'm going to turn this over to Jamie, who operates this.
Anybody that is using our facilities for programming would have to sign that agreement.
even the classes,
If we're doing our own classes.
you're doing your own, I
But
understand.
sometimes we do outsource some of those classes.
Right.
And if we were to do that, they would sign that agreement.
Okay, so anybody other than your staff or you, that other party would have to sign this agreement?
That's correct.
Okay.
But not your day users, I would assume.
We have no, they wouldn't sign that.
Yeah. Because this would be kind of lengthy for a day user.
Yeah.
We do have another form that they sign. They're expected to sign when they come in as part of check-in.
Okay. Much smaller,
Is that?
much shorter.
Much shorter,
condensed.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Judy?
Yeah, first of all, in July 6th meeting, when Claire Carner was here, she asked the planning commission to look into things like, this is a private park, this isn't a public park, so we need to make that clear to the public that this will be a private park. And there are certain municipalities and things like that that are different than a public park. And I think that that should be researched. One of the things when I came across that I looked into when researching private parks is that they don't always have to abide by the First Amendment. So I think, these are, yeah, true. So I think we should do our research that Claire asked us to do on private parks and look into all of the things that go along with that. Also, it does say in their page 239 that if the parking lot is full, day users will be instructed to return when parking is available. So this is a private park, so they can deny day users. And one of the things that come about with private parks often is that that a lot of municipalities look into is that it can become exclusive as opposed to an inclusive situation, and can become, just like it says in here too, that, you have to return at a different time when it's not full from events. I think the other thing that Claire asked us to look into was the traffic situation. And not only are we talking about users at the park, we're talking about the residents that live there and their comings and going as well. The engineer only addressed the park. They did not address the people that live there and the number of trips that they take. The other thing that I think we need to be clear on is the division of this property. I asked for clarification on this, and part of it is in the conservation easement report where it says the recreational area can has to be divided into plats of 75 acres or more. So that would be about 4 or 5 in that area. I don't know what, I've asked for clarification on the camp area, how much can that be divided? Because there was talk that, 500 homes, it can't be that because of the conservation easement, so we need to clear that up with the public and find out what the camp area can be divided in. Remember that this is also, according to Mr. Wendling's report, in the 1960s, this was zoned S1, and he does clarify that. It is LA, it is BR, and the future land use map was the incorrect one that we had, I think, in the December 16th or January packet, that we are looking at master planning this to, part of that to a natural area, the NA district. So let's make sure that, we're clear on what the master plan says. So those are some things that we need to look at. Also, I think the traffic is interesting because we talk about the history of the area. Well, I went back and looked at some census reports. You're going to find it pretty interesting. In 1950, East Bay Township had 1,303 residents. So that's not, in 1970, we had 3,356. And the 2020 census says we have 11,589. So the traffic is different from 2020, even from the 70s, 3,356, that's quite a bit more people. So I think we really do need to have some data regarding, that we've changed since 1950 to 2020. And I think that's very important. Then also, I think we really do need to look at our ordinances. I think the engineer is going to let us know where he is at with section 231, the lakes overlay, and having the correct PUD from the January 4th and then the updated one to talk about that. I'd like it to be addressed too regarding the conservation monitoring. There were about 200 trees, it said, removed. Some of those appear to be in the 500-foot setback from Rennie Lake, even the 100-foot setback. The golf course holes 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 and 5 are within that 500-foot, so I think we really do need to look into that, because the lakes overlay does apply to that situation. If those trees were removed, then, were we aware of that? Were there permits, et cetera? Vegetation, that type of thing within that area? Or do we want to request that those holes be moved if there is going to be a disc golf course, because it is in that vital buffer area that we are so committed to in this township? So I think that's really important. I think we are looking into the impact traffic study, because we really don't, our ordinance doesn't have a thing called access management. We have a thing called Section 227 Traffic Impact Study. And those also affect Section 635, which is places of assembly. We have large and small places of assembly. I'm not sure we've met all the criteria regarding that, regarding paved roads, regarding access roads. So I really think we need to scrutinize those. And then the parking, is the main parking lot within 300 feet of all those venues that they could use? Is it within 300 feet of Besser Lodge? Is it within 300 feet of the pavilion, the chapel? Those are really important questions that we need to scrutinize. And then there's section 645, our campground, and we need to look at the licensure of that, and maybe Peter needs to weigh in on that, because you have cabins 1 through 6. Are those the big cabins? Are those the mini cabins? Are those the Adirondack cabins? I'm not really sure what those are. You also have some things called, well, the mini cabins, I think there's, or Adirondacks, there's 4, and those are not in the licensure. Tent styles, some are at the campsites, but then there's 4 additional ones, like Porcupine, Sunset, Pine Grove, according to your website, that aren't in the licensure, the Eagle licensure. So I think we need to really look at the campground situation and find out is what we're renting, is that licensed by the Eagle? And do we need that, or do we, how does our ordinance fit into this too? Also, our ordinance says that we have to have specific plans for rowdiness, how we're going to deal with that. We really need to look at that section. It also indicates that we should do a site plan review of the campgrounds. I asked to do that on December 16th. We did not view the Everglades. We did not view Yellowstone. Has anybody been out to those primitive campsites to look at them? It says so in our ordinance that we need to be doing that. Section 2820. So I think I have a lot of questions about these things. The planning department does have my memo, and I think we really need to look into these things because we have to follow our ordinance. We have to follow here. So I would really like us to make sure that we're looking in our book and making sure, because this is very complex. This isn't just a straight one-item thing. We have places of large assembly. We have places of small assembly. We have roads that have to be met within those things. We have parking. We define golf course. Doesn't say disc golf. It doesn't say mini golf. We've held Pirates Cove to things. We need to hold to our ordinance. And the ordinance says that you have to have 4 parking places per hole of golf. That's 72 places. I think we really need to look at this and see where we're going and what we're doing before we do approvals, and make sure that we have the approvals clear in our mind, that we made the right decisions based on our master plan and how the master plan affects the ordinances.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
Has the applicant had the chance to review the commentary from Wendling and Associates from the 25th
From the 25th.
of January,
2021.
2021?
Oh, I'm not sure. I would have to look and see. That was before my time.
Well, that's, yeah,
Does that talk about the list of the uses allowed?
yes.
And did you guys get that letter? It was from January of 2021.
Right. I'm trying to think back.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that we did, on, like, in terms of which, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan. I, off the top of my head, I can't affirmatively say, yeah, I remember that specific letter.
It may offer some context to where Judy's coming from. Basically, that's kind of an overarching breakdown from a use perspective of what's being asked versus what was assumed to be grandfathered in. And it kind of just delineates, like, for clarification purposes, different elements of what were allowed and different elements of what the current zoning allows for and how they differentiate. It kind of talked through just, the different paths that can be taken to identify which uses or what we would need to consider. Because I think that's, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, like, that's kind of what you're going off of.
Yeah.
For clarification, because again, with the PUD, we can kind of mix and match, right? Uses and what we want, but it also has to kind of fit into that district. So, maybe that would be a point of reference to help you guys kind of navigate some of that feedback in the future, just for consideration purposes, but I want to make sure you'd seen that, because.
I'm guessing, it sounds familiar. At the time, when we were meeting with Peter and Claire, they were leading us down a kind of a suggested path of designating it as a park. So, we may have been looking at it only through that lens, but I don't know. I'm sure we'll take a look at it tomorrow with, our attorney and our planner and do what you just suggested. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the planner, the Brian Souza said a public park in his report. It's not. It's a private park, and we really need to do our homework on that and find out what that means. Because it's not public.
So, a couple of thoughts on that. The Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy owns land that they open to the public. They're a nonprofit organization. We'll be doing, for the passive recreational use and user, I think it'll be very similar to that. The General Property Tax Act also allows us to dedicate property open to the public. And it's likely we'll be doing that on this piece of property. So I'd love to get, if there's a directive that the commission feels as a whole we should follow, then, let us know what that is. So that, you feel like we're not going to be closing this down and only having it be exclusive for certain people. That's not our intent at all. It never has been.
My only comment is I kind of feel like there's some common ground between, what's being proposed, but then also what has been going on. It's just kind of navigating functionally our process to kind of allow us to evaluate it in the right way. I think that letter would be super helpful for all of us to kind of be on the same page. And, maybe just given the amount of public impact that this is, we've heard from the same crew like 3 times now with a packed house. I think it would be nice to kind of work with the applicant and staff as maybe a subgroup, just as a thought, to throw that out there, to kind of iron some of this stuff or even get Peter involved to the extent where we can kind of like navigate what we got to do. Behind closed doors, to present kind of an application collectively to say this is the path, one way or another. I just hate dragging all these people out every first of the month. And the applicants too.
All right.
We have other business too, and we've got a lot of folks here, and publicly, this is just such a big project. I think it would be nice to have all of our engineers, our legal team, and us on the same page with our staff. We're kind of piecemealing this thing. It just feels like every time they've come forward, we've had new questions.
Yep.
I'd much rather just personally figure some of that stuff out first, and then kind of come to some conclusion with the applicant so that we're all on the same page, rather than do this every month.
Well, I think Peter's letter, it says in 1960 it was S1, and then LA, and then BR, and NA. Now we're looking at part of the thing being that zone that, and some of the things are allowed. Some of the things are not. Our ordinance is clear on that. And so I believe Peter states that in his letter, so we should be clear what's permitted and.
So there is I think what we're running into is, or I think what you're pointing out is some of the aspect that there's kind of some established uses here, and that they're incorporating some of the new uses. But the plan unit development tool, which is kind of, in essence, what it's doing is it's kind of almost working outside of the ordinance. It allows for the township to, it can be applied to any area within the township, for one thing. Now, it still has to adhere to the spirit of the ordinance, because it's a part of the ordinance, but it's more of an extension of the ordinance. And you need to, so this is the ordinance for East Bay Township. Any PUD is added on top of that.
Right, and Peter said in
So-
his letter, though, that we have as a commission, we need to really look into this and need to decide that, what's acceptable and what's.
Right, exactly, and then
What's not?
ultimately, it's the township board that makes that decision, so we're just providing this step here as a recommendation to town board. But it does give a lot of flexibility with the idea that the idea of the plan unit development is something that's unique, where you're incorporating different uses collectively. So there is some flexibility into how this can be applied, and the ordinance is pretty, specific on that, and it allows for quite a bit of flexibility in here, but it is ultimately something that needs to be balanced in accordance with the rest of the ordinance as well as the master plan. So I think what you're kind of alluding to is what is that balance, and then are these appropriate uses? Because we have, well, it's actually technically not us, it's the township board has that ability to alter some of the requirements that are within this ordinance. So I think.
Not us, right.
Right, but we're making a recommendation based on evaluation and input and so forth. Okay. Carl, did you have comments?
Yeah, I was just kind of agreeing with Dan. I mean, just from the sheer volume of information and emails, it would be helpful to have a stepwise, discussion or grouping of what the, potential impacts. So if there's a concern about the, frequency and intensity of events, that's a discussion. If there's a concern about aquatic invasive species, somehow we can break them down so we can discuss them in order and also gauge our commissioners and the public interest in those things and see, where we are. It's very difficult to take all this in and try to discuss it in a round robin and, people going back and forth. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know if staff can somehow group these things for us, or, maybe it's based on, I wasn't on the planning commission when that original attorney's letter came out, so maybe that's a basis for doing that. For me, that would be helpful, because I think these things are resolvable, but it's difficult to do that when you're just kind of going back and forth. That's my 2 cents.
Tracy?
Yeah, I would agree. Probably shame on me for not doing the research to go back to the very beginning of this issue, since I've come on the board. But just for my 2 cents going forward, I have some issues with the intensity of the events, how many there are. And I don't know the answer to that, particularly the large events. Although I go back and forth, because I know from hearing from people who have given public comment and people that I've talked to outside of this, there were times, I'm told, like every weekend all summer, that parents were parked on Hobbs Highway and up Scout Camp and all around when they came for their parent day or something like that. I've not heard one public say they had an issue with that. I would think that would constitute an issue, but nobody's even mentioned that, that past practice was invasive to their livelihood or their living. And yet, the applicant is indicating that all the parking is going to be on their property and not on the roads. And so I would think that'd be a better, an improvement. But I do have concerns with the intensity of the large events, even the 20 a year. the May through October, there's 27 weeks, and there's 12 weddings, but 20 events. I'm assuming a good majority of them are going to be May to October to be at the 420, attendees. So that's a lot for that amount of time, in my opinion. And I don't think that the applicant has the ability to tell us, oh, well, no, we only get, we'll have the 12 weddings, but the other, are going to be outside of that May and October, because they've not run it like this before. So, start smaller, like we told the other applicant, start smaller and you can come back and add if, I don't know. But that concerns me. Maybe move some of those into the transient activity, what do you call this? Split out.
The transient activity permit?
Permit, yes. Into that category rather than the permitted category. I don't know.
I think that's a separate standalone ordinance, is it not? So that has probably, or you must have at least 500 or more? Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause that's one question I had on here, where it said greater than 420, and I don't think that would apply technically. I mean, I guess they could offer to go through that process. Is that what you're doing? Okay, that's, all right, that's what I thought. But that's separate from our ordinance. It's a police power ordinance.
Peter said those are for only like the one or two things that might come up a year, not
Right.
regular.
Right, okay.
I think too, we really do need to look at this, because when I looked at the information on the campground, it has to say the hour, under our ordinance, it says number 6, the hours and the season the facility will operate. Well, we received information from the health department regarding potable water and facilities in the winter, and I'm not sure when the campground's even gonna run. I mean, we know some hours that maybe by 10 o'clock it can't go in and out. I'm not really sure quite yet, but what are the seasons? It does say so in our ordinance that we need this information to make these decisions. I think the other thing that I noticed is that the fire department report said that the roads had to be 18 feet, and every other thing we dealt with tonight asked for 20 foot. So what is it? I mean, how come the fire department's only requesting 18-foot wide roads there, and they're requiring 20 feet for Stellar, for the two other, for Ms. Raymond's farm and everything else? So we got to have some consistency here, and we need to really make sure that we're consistent with our special land uses and our ordinances.
John, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
I did talk to Peter about the other sections in the ordinance. So Judy's referenced the campground section and the event section, and he says, this is a PUD, it's under 636, and that's what you're looking at. So the assembly regulations and the special use and the campground regulations, those don't apply in that they have to be met for this application, because the special use is a planned unit development. So you're welcome to, if you pull from them, you can do that if you find that an item's important, but in our review, in our approval process, you're not required to go through those standards. And I think where John mentioned too, the PUD is kind of built upon that. There may be uses that are not in the ordinance, and that's why they're here looking at a PUD. They may want items that are, kind of a variation from the ordinance. That's why they're in the PUD process. So to kind of look at it as a whole and say, they're providing this, so we're going to give this flexibility or flexibility from the ordinance when you're looking at it as a whole. So that may help you. I'm not saying totally disregard the other sections of the ordinance, but you're looking at their application specific, and this is a, tied to just this property specifically, how it fits in the township. And I did talk to Claire about the future land use map. So she had said you did have a draft future land use map for the master plan that she's still working on. So that's not effective, so you're dealing with your current future land use map. And she had said that, to her recollection, they were the same, the designations of the districts were the same on both maps. There was only one property that was changing for future land use on the new map. But even, outside of that, that's a map that doesn't currently regulate within the township.
Right. And you're right, that didn't change, and it's just, it does though provide the guidance for, in this case, particularly when we're looking at the plan unit development, because it's basically customizing an ordinance specifically for this project, for this property.
Great. I just have a question about October 2nd, 2020 letter to Jamie from the Conservancy, where it says, "Thank you for sending the proposal for short-term lease on campsites and equipment rental and educational services." If you read through this letter, it doesn't mention one thing that the Conservancy gave approval for events, other than it says lease of campsites, equipment, rental, and educational services. So are they approving? I don't know.
We just received an updated letter from the Conservancy that we did not have time to include in our packet, but it's dated recent, and it's based on our latest application. So we can provide that to you for next month as well.
And is that really our place to monitor whether they're adhering to the Conservancy agreement that they have?
I don't think it would be. I mean, I don't think that would be under the guise of the zoning. I mean, it's an aspect of the development, and it's understanding that, what restrictions might be in place or have to be monitored or whatever. It's information to know about it, but I don't think it pertains to the actual application, so it's helpful.
Yeah, and we do need to apply the lakes overlay, though.
That was a question that I had. How does so again, as one of the newest members here, who's totally overwhelmed, because this is big, so obviously we want to give it the concern it deserves and the attention it deserves, and so I've been reading everything. How does the Forest Lakes overlay, so you're talking about the PUD section of the zoning, Sarah, so that we don't really have to look at the camping and the other. How does the Forest Lakes overlay play into the PUD application? Do we have, so just trying to look at what trumps what. It's very confusing, you know what I mean? It's just, there's so much, so, okay, we don't, in the zoning ordinance, we're only looking at the PUD section, but how does the overlay play into it?
Yeah, and I think they kind of can go together even. I'm not going to say one trumps the other than there may be a portion of the overlay that the plan unit development, for good reason, would kind of vary from that requirement. I did put the lakes overlay in here and go through the different standards for that, because that does apply. I'm just looking at, when I say the other sections in Article 6 or in the section for special use permits, we're picking one special use, and that special use is a planned unit development.
Okay.
The other portions of the ordinance, would apply, or they're asking for something that's a little bit different from it. And that's what kind of forced them into the engineer's review, is because that's in that, overlay area, that the engineer is the one that has to do that.
Okay.
And then kind of going back to the engineer's report, I worked on the Forest Lakes overlay ordinance, and I think we need to get clarification from Mr. Largent, because at that time, we all sat on Brown Bridge, and that Brian said that he assumed it didn't mean oil wells, but Mr. Largent was instrumental in writing that, and Brown Bridge does have a lot of oil wells, and so I would like clarification rather than just assuming that part of his report, that he thought that it just meant water.
Oh, for one of the standards
Yeah.
that we had in here.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Do you know which one that was?
Let me,
Just want to make a note real quick.
yeah, let's see, I do know which one it is, hold on. Let me look. It is, it's section 231, number 3, Roman numeral 4.
Oh, that's in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, okay, you wanted you wanted what he
Yeah,
said.
the page number
Okay,
in the packet.
yeah, do you know his,
Because he doesn't have a Roman numeral 4 on his letter.
I know, he just kind of has it together.
Is it B, a description of this? No, that doesn't talk about it.
What page was
See,
it?
it says areas that we could see a potential for contamination, that sentence?
Can I email you?
Yeah, that would be fine.
What page is his,
His starts on 250.
okay, yeah, 251.
Is it 251?
And 250, no, 250, 250. Okay, he said assumed, here, let me look. First of all, he has public park on page 251 when that needs to be changed. And then we need to check the licenses on the campground compared to what Eagle is approving and what they say, and then it said, and then number 2, he's got these wrong, it's section 231.5C3, and it says here, existing well information is assumed to be potable water and not oil or natural gas. And having worked on that overlay and us sitting on Brown Bridge, I'm not sure Mr. Largent and the writers of that can be assumed.
Judy, where are you talking about comments from Brian Sosa? In his letter?
Yeah.
Is the reference to 231.5.c?
Well,
that-
he calls it 203, but it's really section 231. He's got a few things.
Where,
confused.
oh, you're
That's
talking,
page-
oh, I see what you're saying
Yeah.
regarding the environmental assessment outlined in
Yeah.
section 203
Right.
Forest Lakes Overlay District.
Right.
Okay, I see.
Right, sorry. It's kind of confusing because some of the numbers are wrong.
So he's
Gotcha.
got
Sorry.
203 and 203.
Yeah,
So you're
that's-
saying item A here, because it says a description of the site and the current conditions shall include, and then it's got item 4, existing wells, approximate depth and use, and that's his comment.
Right.
Is that,
I'd just like him to make sure that, rather than assuming that we have the facts.
so we can just ask that the applicant provide more information about any wells on the site, and then Brian can refresh that to say what type of wells are on the site.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you. And Brian didn't, you said Brian had the Conservancy monitoring report, so will he be commenting on that more thoroughly?
He was just going through whatever the standards that are in the ordinance to see if additional information was needed, just based on each of the standards. So he wasn't making any real comments. He did look at it, there was some concern about the age of some of the information, and that original document was 20 years old, but he didn't feel the type of information that it was, that information would change over 20 years. He's very comfortable with the data in that environmental information, even though, there has been questions about that 20-year. That wasn't an issue for him.
Well, I'm concerned about the 200 trees and then the moving of objects from Rennie Lake Beach area, from that
That's-
report. So if we
yeah.
could, if he could weigh in on that regarding the overlay and any issues there regarding stormwater, slope, that type of thing would be really important. Any removal of trees within 500 feet of Rennie, bass, or spider.
Any other more comments? Judy? Okay. Renee, any other follow-up stuff?
No, you guys have all said it.
Okay. Paul, any comments?
Well, I mean, basically, we've been skinning this onion quite a bit. I'm kind of with Dan on, let's get together and figure this thing out and put together the right things. Obviously, there's great opportunities here. It's a fine piece of property. I like the fact of the vision of trying to open it up to the public, but I'm also cognizant of the concerns that the people who live in the area have, and the concerns that we want to have to maintain basically a nice place to live and have good facilities. So I think that basically we need to get all the main folks together, because we have this letter and that letter and all the other letters, and this one is there and pointing up. And I think we need to resolve some of the issues, in fact, all the issues, to come out with a good decision. But let's get to a point where we can make a decision on this.
Okay. Any follow-up, any other things? Okay. So I think what everybody's experienced on the Planning Commission is an information overload. So when you get hundreds and hundreds of emails, you get letters, not just current part of the application, but letters from a year or two ago. But actually, when we're discussing some of these things, I think it's important to really reflect on Section 636 of the ordinance, which is that plan unit development section. So, because what I'm hearing, quite honestly, in conversations that we're having on this, it's really gets back to the intensity of the events, which the applicant has provided some very clear information on those. It's just a matter of, is that appropriate or not? The uses, which the PUD part does allow for that flexibility, and it's explicit in here where it does talk about altering lot sizes, required facilities, buffers, open space areas, setbacks. I mean, it gets into alleviating some of the dimensional and use restrictions that are placed in the ordinance to provide for this concept of the plan unit development. But I think it's been kind of lost in some of these conversations, so that needs to be clarified, at least for our understanding. And then the last part, I think, is the engineering report, which is something that is required, that even though there is that Section 636, which allows some flexibility, I think the ordinance was very clear that the requirement in the Forest Lakes Overlay District, which isn't something that can be altered by the Planning Commission, doesn't really give us that, and it's something that we feel is important and we want to adhere to, so it all makes sense. But I kind of felt that those are the three areas that were really kind of honing into. I think, I don't know if there's really more conversation to have. I don't think there's anything that can, we certainly don't want to do anything outside of this forum, at least as a planning commission. I do think it would be appropriate at this time to have a very clear application presented to us, which the information has been provided to us. Today, we're just seeing the supplemental information that was provided. We did get a full application before, but I think it would be to bring it all together in a complete application, allow staff, along with legal counsel, to provide a final report. And quite honestly, I don't know what more to go beyond that. I think that the application, even though the information is spread out in assorted documents and so forth, the information is, the application itself is still pretty much intact. It just needs to be codified, essentially presented, and I think then we can have a clear discussion, particularly if we can have some pointed, in which we've had already, but some pointed direction from staff and legal counsel on this, just to provide maybe some history, going back to what Peter has said previously, and then give us some of that overview. I don't know, that's my feeling. I think quite honestly, the main issue here is the events. I think the other uses to some extent have been on the property previously. The events is what probably is most concerning, but I think the applicant, in my mind at least, has done a very good job in presenting those. These are events, to me, these are point-in-time activities. They're not something that is necessarily always ongoing. They're willing to share their schedule with us. The important thing in any type of development review is to have the ability to monitor that and to ensure that they're meeting any type of approval should it be given, so that from an enforcement standpoint, and I think they have now pieced together those pieces that allow for us to ensure that they are meeting what would potentially be an approval by the township, should that go forward by the township board. So I'm of the mindset that I think just pare away the other stuff, the extraneous stuff, get back to the basic, which we pretty much have, and then just present that. There are some things that have been brought up that should be addressed in that. We know that there's the engineer still working to refine that report, but at that point, I'm pretty comfortable to at least allow us to then go through that and make a decision and make a recommendation to the township board.
I just think that I need clarification from Peter on who, does Eagle enforce the camp regulations, or do we, to make sure that those meet what they're really doing, and then the overlay, of course, and then I think section 636, number 4, A through G is imperative that we really look at the regulations and conditions of that.
So you're talking about the regulations, because there's 2 4s. But the second, yeah,
Oh,
there's
yeah, there
there's a
are.
4
Sorry.
objectives and 4 regulations,
Yeah, I guess
conditions.
that should be 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's written like that, in your
Yeah,
zoning
it's-
ordinance, that's why in my report it's written like that too. I had to go through and change it, because I'm like, well, it says 4 in the
Yeah.
ordinance, so.
The objectives should be 3.
Yeah. Well,
Because I think what would be helpful for us is to, my thought is, once we get this all back into order, is there should be some type of findings established that we can present, and those findings should be based on that objectives part. Could provide it for the next meeting as well. That I would be comfortable with that, is to ensure that provides us with, those are kind of the guidance that's given to the PUDs as they're going through it. And I think having some findings along with that complete application should give us some comfort and understanding of how this is all organized. Because I think it's all right in our midst right now. I think it is just, needs to be organized in a way that's easy to digest.
So the engineer will weigh in on the overlay, the traffic, the health department things, those kinds of things he addressed in there, is that correct? He'll finish that up?
He had only been directed to review based on the overlay, what the engineer is supposed to do. If you want him to look at other things, I can ask him to do that, to
Well-
review other things, but
But why would he, I mean, the health department's going to take care of the sewer.
Well, he did address that in his report, so I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And then definitely regulations, conditions do vehicular pedestrian circulation, so I think, and then non-congested, convenient, I mean, and in the overlay, it does address traffic issues as well. So, and then Claire addressed that in our July 6th meeting, as well as us doing some research on our own from the minutes.
So if you could do like an appropriate timeline with that.
I will do my best.
It doesn't have to have everything, but just some of those pointed
Yeah.
references so that we just,
I'll look back through the file and see what I can put together and.
yeah, I mean, you don't have to get in a lot of detail, but just some of the key points. And then that will help to roll into the findings as well, because that will be supportive of the steps that have already occurred. Because those are reviews, whether they were done by the planning commission staff or legal counsel, are all leading to decision for this board to make a recommendation to the township board.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark?
In the complete application I'll put together, are you looking for something that would then have, you want like, not full-size prints, but larger prints of the whole site plan and all of that?
Yeah, at least 11 by 17s would be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want a lot of the extraneous stuff that wasn't part of the application that might be, added to it. What we want to do is get basic down, because those will be, if there are any conditions or anything that we need to apply, like we'll kind of have that general other agency permits and approvals as necessary, those types of things will all be dealt with that. But, yeah, just kind of getting right down to the core of the application and, yeah, okay.
Can I get one clarification, John or Sarah? There was a memo back in May, I think, that was kind of established legal non-conforming uses, overnight camping, and then the PUD application, at least as initially presented, was for day use activities. Is there, can you make in that statement it clear what the application is for? Because I get confused. Does one supersede the other? If something was a legal non-conforming use, okay for overnight campers, is it allowed regardless of what happens with the PUD during the day? Because some campers don't leave at 6 a.m. Those are kind of things that are kind of difficult for me to understand, at least to know what is a past legal non-conforming use versus this PUD. Does that then take care of everything and change it and essentially discard the letter that was the legal non-conforming use? And that's the things that, I have difficult understanding or ascertaining from all this stuff.
Right.
And then a couple other things that maybe we need clarification on. I think we got a letter late in the process here about an access road encroachment at South 89 on the map, and so if there are any, if those are legal encroachments or they're noted in the deeds on that property. And then if we could have clarification on the fire department, if it's 18 feet or 20 feet, and if they have turnarounds, and if they need hammerheads or whatever.
Right, yep, I can go back and pull their
Okay.
approval letter.
Okay.
That, I think that was in last month's packet, the fire department
Yep,
approval.
it was.
Yeah, that backup is essential,
Yep.
but, yeah, those agency reviews. But, yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff that.
Yeah, I
we've been
would say, could you
swarmed with.
include all the letters that, so we can reference them since they're all over the place? So at least get it all in one spot. Let's put all the letters together, because some letters appeared in the, December meeting, and others appeared in the January meeting. I mean, just, let's put it all together so we have some easy reference point that we all have.
And Paul, you're talking about the letters such as from like legal counsel or?
I am.
Staff or agency reviews?
I am.
Yeah,
Yes.
right, okay. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're looking for. I was already
Yeah.
thinking about this yesterday, so.
Yeah, it's almost like we just need like a booklet of it and just package it all in, because, and then we can work towards, you know, having
Notes would be good.
discussion on it.
Well, and if we could get it maybe earlier than the Thursday before the meeting? I know that's very difficult, but it's a lot of stuff to go through.
It is.
What we might do is we could do, you know, what you have and as it exists, and then, you know, the engineer, I just don't know his timeline and how that's all working. So if then there becomes changes to that,
Right.
you know, then you start supplementing it again. So we can try to put something together. I understand. No, it's a lot of information, and to have the time to look it over and review it.
Yeah, I mean.
But even if we get it out, I guess.
Everybody has a full-time job.
Right.
Right.
This is our
Well, that's what
second
I'm trying
one.
to do is streamline it, but
This has
also,
become a
if
full-time job.
It has.
something isn't ready and it's not, there's still something outstanding, I'd like to have, and it may hang up our discussion, or I'd like to get that resolved before then. And I think, I don't know, I would be willing to be flexible to, you know, if we need another special meeting or something like that. Not encouraging that, but I'm just, point being though is what the goal here is to get something that's pretty concise, that's ready to roll so that we can evaluate that and then make some type of or, you know, if you provide some draft findings on that and then make that recommendation to go forward to the township board.
You're kind of looking for the final record that you're making your
Yeah.
decision based on, all put together in a nice package that's
Yeah.
300 or some pages.
Well, and the township board's gonna need that anyway.
Right,
So,
and-
Absolutely.
you know, you might as,
Yeah.
yeah, we might as well get it now.
Yeah, and Judy, I know you had a lot of items, so if you could follow up with Sarah on it, just to make sure we got the
Yep.
checks on that, okay,
Yeah, we can.
all right.
Are you gonna
Okay.
do public comment then now for the township?
Yeah, well, at this point, we're not going to be obviously taking action this evening, but before I do that, I do want to hear back from the applicant, just to make sure that they're okay with what we're trying to do, if you have any comments or...
Yes, we agree completely to this and appreciate that, actually. I hate to admit this, but I probably get sometimes just as confused as you with all the documents that I'm carrying around. So that's absolutely a worthwhile venture. You did bring up a subcommittee or something like that, so I just want to clarify, is that something that you don't need to entertain at this time? We will work directly with staff.
Yes, I don't think it would be appropriate for any of us to be meeting with anybody other than in this forum, so,
Okay, just want to clarify.
yeah.
And so we'll work with Sarah, and then do you need, she will prepare new findings, and then does that need to also be reviewed by Mr. Wendling for your next meeting as well?
I mean, I don't know if it needs to be reviewed by him. I mean, it's just to make sure that it's supported by the ordinance. I guess you can make that call. I mean,
He gets a copy of the packet. He'll probably be present at the next meeting if you're going to be talking about findings, just in case you have any questions that come
Okay.
up. I don't typically send it to him before, he sees it in the packet when you see it, I guess.
yeah, okay, that's fine. I think that would
If
be,
you need a verification, if you need a review for him, we want to provide time for him to do that so that it is at your
Yeah.
next meeting.
Okay.
If you do need that or not, that's up to you guys.
And I'll try to get stuff to Sarah really quick so that she can share with the commission and the applicant my clarifications, so that we have plenty of time.
Okay.
How's that? At least a couple weeks.
That works. Thank you. We do appreciate that.
okay. Well, I think it would probably be, I mean, at this point, we're not going to be altering anything on the application, so I would like to at least table that and go forward and then hear from the public for comment on this. I mean, we're not, or,
You ready?
yeah.
I make a motion to table SPR 12-21, SLU 4-21, GOREC PUD, for, as discussed, all the items to the March board meeting.
Absolutely support.
Okay. We have a motion to table the application till March, and this support for that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So what I'd really like to afford is the opportunity for public comment on this application. If you just please come to the podium. Please be mindful that we're kind of getting late into the evening, so keep your comments limited, please.
Hello, I'm Caitlin. I'm a nurse in Traverse City. I'm just going to read my email because I think it's the best way to give everyone some insight. I grew up on Spider Lake. I'm 30, so I was born and raised there. Just a short distance from GOREC property. When the property's disc golf course was created, my brother's friends and I frequented the grounds to enjoy time outside in nature together. We have had many days on the property and absolutely love the small-town feel of the disc golf course that is surrounded by trees and woods. It has been such a great outlet for people on the east side of town to use for disc golf, hiking, cross-country skiing, etc. The property is close enough for people to make the short trip to do said activities without driving across town one direction or the other. I'd like to mention the buildings on the GOREC property are historic and should be preserved. So many of our historic landmarks are taken for granted and ultimately removed and/or dissolved due to the lack of maintenance and/or resources. We as a community should be advocating for the few historic landmarks that we do have. While GOREC has been a frequent and important topic in our neighborhoods, in the recent years, for reasons mentioned above, I now also have some more personal ties with the property. My fiance and I have inquired about getting married there, particularly because I grew up in the area and it is a rustic property that could potentially have all of the accommodations we are looking for. Of course, without the application for approval, we are unable to make any type of plans. It takes only a quick Google search to find that wedding venues and accommodations in the Traverse City and surrounding areas are astronomically priced. GOREC would be the only rustic, most importantly, fairly priced, accessible wedding and event venue option in the area. Not only do we want to get married there and fully support the revenue building by doing so and such other events, but the park being open to these options will supply our community with opportunities to include all walks of life. Event shutdown times and curfews would certainly be in place to make this public camping location family-friendly and also show respect to all people who visit. Another important factor I'd like to consider is that many people have expressed interest in using the property for walking, hiking trails, etc., but not in support of events. I'd like to point out that GOREC is a business and upkeep is necessary for any business. Therefore, a few to mention, but not limited to, offices for the staff that include furnaces, building maintenance, etc. So I just wanted to share this information to truly consider approving the GOREC PUD for all of the good things that can come of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Breath of fresh air.
Good evening. Josh Sloat, Running Lake resident at 1482 Woods and Waters Trail, former Boy Scout who annually attended Scout Camp at Camp Graylick, and current representative to many snowbirds away for the winter, folks watching from home, and the new Save Forest Lakes nonprofit, established to help preserve one of the finest places left on Earth. I really applaud the wonderful, thorough, in-depth conversation that's ensued tonight. But in attempting to move forward amicably with our new, potentially lifelong neighbors, we would like to request that GOREC withdraw its present application and instead collaborate directly with us to resubmit one that keeps the property, trails, and lake open, but doesn't do so at the cost of our peace, safety, and the environment. Should GOREC be unwilling to accept this earnest offer, and we mean it with Scout's honor, to work with us, we came tonight wanting to propose two separate motions. The first was tabling until we had sufficient answers to so many questions. We thank you for doing that. The second is tabling the vote until the public has had a chance for another hearing in light of a tremendous volume of new information. So we wanted to request these two motions in light of the following information. One's with regard to the environmental assessment. It's really great to hear that so much extra diligence is going to be done around that, especially when the engineer said that that was something that needed to be done. We do want to point out, though, with regard to any potential waivers that could be discussed, under Section 231, Paragraph 5C of the zoning ordinance, the documented presence of wetlands on the property prohibits the township engineer from granting a waiver on any of these components, even if he wanted to. And I do have here a copy of the paragraph from the ordinance, as well as documentation from the conservation easement and the Grand Traverse wetlands inventory identifying these wetlands. This is important to consider with regard to any waivers of any components of the environmental assessment. 2 is with regard to zoning offenses. This application is wholly inconsistent with our ordinance, and it's incompatible with adjacent land use. This is a commercial enterprise erupting out of conformity. This cannot be ignored per special land use review standards. We've retained legal counsel as the same group helping protect Forest Lakes to help us in navigating these zoning-related complexities. So we've submitted to the township, it's in your packet, a legal opinion on this application as it pertains to our ordinance master plan and future land use map, with a focus on the defining principles, on the offenses to the defining principles and legal protections afforded to the Lakes area and Forest Lakes overlay districts. You're going to find a copy of this in your packet. And this is so important because of the conversation that did happen tonight. Planned unit development is not an ultimate tool of infinite flexibility without constraints. It is legally constrained. Like, we do want to be able to give landowners some flexibility, to work within the ordinance, beyond the ordinance, if it's a no harm, no foul situation. But there is a really important conversation about what trumps what, right? Like, we don't want to put, pot and porn shops next to a school, right? Like, we have to have reasonable constraints around these things. And I have to mention, the Section 602 of our ordinance, special land use review standards explicitly says, the Planning Commission, before acting on a special land use application, shall employ, this is not optional, and be guided by the standards which shall be consistent with and promote the intent and purpose of this zoning ordinance, and ensure that the land use or activity authorized shall be compatible with adjacent uses of land and the natural environment. Shall. These are not infinite trumping powers. They still must be compatible with the law of the land, the contract that we've established within the citizens, current and future, of East Bay Township. Our third point is around community agency awareness. Key community agencies have been kept in the dark on this. The sheriff has not commented, nor the ambulance service. I'm happy to hear that the health department's involved now, but as of our call with them on January 21st, the health department had not seen the application nor had any awareness as to its existence. As of January 24th, the same could be said of the road commission. No awareness on the change of use, no consultation, no possession of this application. The road commission expressed concerns about the scope and potential necessity of a traffic study, given obvious impact and potential danger. Section 635 of our ordinance further demands that places of public assembly such as these have their primary access directly on US 31 North or onto a county primary road, of which this is neither. And it requires that, to ensure public safety, review comments from the Grand Traverse County Road Commission be submitted to East Bay Planning and Zoning prior to consideration of a site plan by the Planning Commission. This has not happened. Public transparency, point number 4. We've submitted FOIA requests to the Township, Fire Department, Health Department, Sheriff's Department, Central Dispatch, and Eagle, with questions all pertinent to proper diligence and transparency surrounding this application. 5 of these 6 requests remain pending. 5, scope changes require another hearing. The original hearing was unjustly buried in a time of the year when many impacted residents were either consumed by holidays or had already departed for the winter. Putting aside the fact that most were not even aware until now, and also putting aside the original hearing notice doesn't even include the word event, the scope of this application has changed significantly since the public hearing. The scope of events, including size and frequency alone, has grown dramatically between what was confusingly articulated on December 16th and what we actually have in print today. The Commission did not have clarity on this ask until January, so how is it reasonable to assume that the public did at the December 16th hearing? Further, It was established at the June 15th meeting by Mr. Wendling that changes to applications have to be renoticed for a public hearing to give the public opportunity to comment on those changes. There is established township precedent for this. 6, pending township clarification. We have submitted pertinent ordinance clarifying questions to the township that remain unanswered, including a lack of clarification around critical matters of riparian rights, places of public assembly, multi-boat access sites, non-conforming waterfront uses, and potential oversights with the township engineer's opinion on the environmental assessment. You'll find a collated copy of these questions in your packet. Number 7, this one's huge. This one's huge, and it speaks so much to the conversation that's happened tonight in terms of what a PUD is allowed to do. How flexible can it be? What are its constraints? Our planned unit development application requirements statement of intent necessitates that any proposed project that the Planning Commission approves, quote, will not have any adverse economic, social, or environmental impact on surrounding land uses. Any. That is precisely zero allowable impact. None. In the true spirit of what a PUD was meant to allow, this is to ensure that the laws you give the applicant permission to break will not have adverse effects on their neighbors. As it has yet been proven otherwise by the applicant, nor can it be, this impact is in the unique purview of Goric's surrounding neighbors. Over 250 neighbors have all digitally signed a petition, right here, indicating that they believe that this project will have adverse impacts, economically, socially, and environmentally on their surrounding land uses. You will find a copy of this petition in your packet. Among the expressed adverse effects are noise, traffic, smoke, environmental impact, property devaluation, lake infestation and overcrowding, safety, and the social strain of the tension this will forever bring to a place of peace. So many of our neighbors had no idea this was going on. They're shocked, confused, and frustrated as how something like this is even possible. Ignoring their perspectives in your deliberation would be a great public disservice and a violation of this application's requirements. We ask that you consider these motions carefully. And, it feels like there's really good consensus coming out around extra diligence being done, but we implore you to consider another public hearing. Voting on this application without answers to the questions raised tonight, without answers to so many questions we haven't even been given time to ask, without time to review new materials, and without giving the public a hearing in light of this massive scope changes since the original hearing would be hasty, irresponsible, and a public disservice. Thank you for your consideration and for your time investment in what will be a lifetime impacting decision for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My mom's calling. I'll put down remind me. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to the commission. I've sat on many a board, as Renee knows, and it isn't easy as you stand there and do what you've got to do. A couple of things that I want to
I'm sorry, sir. If you could have your name and address, please.
I'm sorry. My name's Matt Dukoski. I own property here in East Bay Township. Believe it or not, I'm a neighbor of that guy.
He usually doesn't admit that in public.
I also want to say thank you to Gorick. Gorick's got some great ideas, and there's so many great ideas that we are, in fact, for. And we hear public comment all the time about how we don't want people to use the property. We don't want people to use the lake. We think that we should own it. There's nothing further from the truth. I want to mention real quick, just one thought before I read the piece that I've put together here. There's a subdivision that was just created off of Supply Road, just, I believe it would be west of Island Lake. That developer, for 35 homes, was required to put a passing lane in and pave both sides of the road. Now, I'm not saying that has to be done, but I am saying that we need to look closer at what this is going to do to that neighborhood. Quite frankly, Gorick should be embarrassed by the fact that today, the application that they gave to you, that Paul had to point out, still had the shooting range in it. Didn't have what they're promoting on social media, the fact that they're going to give us the cleaning of the boats. Neither one was in there. Who's reading this stuff? I think it's ridiculous that you guys have got to take a look and be that thorough when you've been told it's not there. And I commend you for being that thorough. Judy, you've done a great job of raising questions. Renee, you're a beginner like I was when I first started doing this. But here we got disc golf. I'm all for it. It's the kind of use that should be there. That close to the water? Nobody knew that? That's kind of pretty crazy, I think. The public using the property. So if the public comes and the event's going on, they got to go away. What if the public's there and the event starts later? Who's got to leave then? A PUD is a very powerful tool. I've used it many a time. I don't believe that I've ever seen it used in a park-like setting like this. And I think that we need to be really careful about what we're trying to do. I'm of the opinion East Bay Township's never seen anything like this, and we need to get it right. With that being said, I'd like to share some thoughts on the KPM engineering that appeared in tonight's packet. The Rotary purchase letter claims to provide an initial review of the potential traffic volumes on the surrounding roadway and network. The analysis is woefully inadequate. It ignores the 300-plus campers, commercial vendors, and deliveries. It makes an unreasonable assumption about when events could occur relative to peak traffic times. Further, this new activity will more or less change the peak times. It doesn't matter when peak times are presently. Peak traffic is peak traffic. People will be coming and going from large events whenever they are, and that will become the new peak. Vehicle occupancy assumptions seem unreasonable given event types and fail to cite sources. The analysis fails to consider that most events will happen during the summer months, when roads are already under considerable traffic stress. The letter also wrongly predicts future use intersection safety based on historical data, when it's been clearly established by the township that historic uses are not applicable given event types, frequency, and volume. 15 years of traffic data from a quiet country road cannot reasonably predict the safety of a once quiet intersection. Once it becomes inundated with 300 campers, commercial traffic, and 500 event guests. I do believe you can have a large event and still have people camping there, because I don't think they tie into each other. Unless when they have a special event, they tell all the campers they're not welcome that day. These are not arterial roads. The property isn't located on a primary county road. These facts have been confirmed by the Grand Traverse Road Commission. Hobbs Highway is a narrow, hilly, winding, limited line of sight country road. The nearest primary intersection sits on a curve. We have to stop ignoring the impact from the change of youth, both from the potential thousands of new guests and campers, as well as the commercial traffic that will be required to support busy event center operations. The road is inadequate to begin with. Proposed activities will do nothing but exacerbate its underlying unchangeable issues. Also, aside from the glaring deficiency of the provided analysis, as a tax-paying resident of this township, I'd also like to point out that the land is owned by a nonprofit corporation, leased to another nonprofit. Beyond being recklessly unsafe, this project will not pay to support the roads or emergency services. The proposed use will have a huge financial impact on these services. renting the cabins or the hall or none of that will pay for anything to maintain those roads. The proposed use will, and it will be up to the adversely impacted neighbors to pick up the bill for these services and taxes. At a minimum, the applicant should consider providing a payment in lieu of taxes to make up for any deficiencies arising from their nonprofit status. In conclusion, Gorick and Rotary must do a proper independent analysis and traffic generation model to accurately look at the impacts of this change in use. The Road Commission, as you heard from Josh, this letter was written a couple days ago, didn't even know that this was going on. That should blow you away. We have to demand transparency and basic diligence. Once again, want to thank you for your hard work. It isn't easy what you're doing, but you've been burdened with a very difficult job. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Leanne Hamilton, and I live at 3296 Tibbetts Drive on Tibbetts Lake. And I'm new in the area, so I'm at a disadvantage in not knowing a lot of your processes, and I apologize for any misstatements I might make. We don't even have townships where I come from, so it's different. But I have the advantage, too, of kind of looking in from a fresh view. And I always believe in thinking outside the box, which sometimes takes a very deliberate effort to think that way. But to me, there seems to be one very simple solution that would address a lot of the problems, and that's to do the environmental assessment, to have the project applicant pay for, hire people, and be responsible to do the environmental assessment. That, to me, is normal in any situation like this, because I've been 45 years as an environmental scientist and engineer. I think it's 45 since I graduated from U of M with my master's degree in water quality and my bachelor's degree in natural resources. 47 some years since then, I've worked for all levels of government except maybe this one. I worked for US EPA, US EPA in Washington, D.C., in the Office of Water Enforcement and Permits. I worked for consulting way on the other end. I worked for State of Maryland Department of Natural Resources. I worked for special districts and Los Angeles County Sanitation District, special district, a water district that did water recycling and construction. So I've seen, and when the construction that they did, I was in charge of the EIRs and the process of getting permits and working with the Army Corps of Engineers on wetlands issues. So, and I did planning and also financial. So anyway, but I've never in my experience seen a situation where somebody took the burden that you're taking on yourselves and, to do all this work and that it's putting on us and the public to try to keep up with it. And the solution to me would be, I thought the main reason a lot of people from the public came here tonight was because you were going to maybe make a decision on whether to give a waiver for the environmental assessment. But the advantage of doing, and besides the fact that, the ordinance overlay seems to make it mandatory, I don't know why you would want to waive that, because then the project applicant has to bear the cost, and they have to go through all of this. It's just unfair to staff, I would think, to expect them to do it all. And the environmental assessment will, they'll have to come up with one clear project description, and then all these different impacts will be looked at. Traffic, noise, air pollution, water pollution, all of it will be looked at. Because if you try to do it, something's going to fall through the cracks, and you're going to have multiple hearings. With the environmental assessment, you can maybe have one hearing and give the public a chance to comment on the assessment. So I know I'm also a registered professional engineer, and I would not presume to write a letter report on traffic and then give my opinion that something's insignificant, because that's, and and you don't even know who this person is maybe that wrote that letter or what their credentials are, or, and looks like they overlooked a lot of things. But that should all be part of the environmental assessment and done by a consultant that does that routinely and knows what the standards are for all of these things. So I would think you have enough to do figuring out about the overlays and PUD and what your responsibilities are, to not have to take on that burden of, the whole environmental aspect. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Brian Lettinga, Scout Camp Road. Two pieces I'd just like to add to would be the topic of transparency, and what got me more involved in this, other than being a landowner on the lake, is just the transparency that comes from the organization Go Rec and Rotary. And there's a lot of websites out now and social media pieces that do state Go Rec is closed or not operating for day use for special reasons. There's only one reason it's not operating. They were in violation of an ordinance. Everybody should understand that it's not operating because of that. And in that return, they put forward the PUD. And just to echo what Josh was saying, in 636, Section 2, the real wording is, and all not have any adverse economic, social, or environmental impact on surrounding land uses. And I think it's clear by the people that are here, it would be GoRec's responsibility to prove that. We shouldn't be coming out here saying you need to prove it. They would come forward and prove it. And property value, there's an adverse economic effect. Taxes going up for the roads, there's another economic effect. Social effect, more traffic, the noise. If any of you go out to a lake, come out to my house in May when someone's talking on the other side of the lake, you'll hear it. I know a lot about everybody in this room, and they know a lot about me. So that's going to come real quick, real fast, of calling the sheriff when there's a noise report. We've got it down to a science where we just drive over or paddle over and say, hey, would you mind keeping it down? That's a social piece. And then the financial piece we already talked about, but please do some more due diligence. We entrust the township to be looking after everybody's best interest. And I think it's by the show of people here tonight, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So I ask you to stand for something.
I'm Terry Brandt, 5555 Scout Camp Road. I've lived there about 35 years, and I just sort of want to follow up on what Judy had mentioned, and I'm glad to see that we're going to go see what some of these uses are, because there's been a lot of confusion. And I know one thing I think is really important, before we even look at this PUD, I'm not a PUD master by any means, but I was looking and it said, we need to understand the principles so we can make sure we can grant the applicants the permission to break our laws. Now, Section 602 on the Special Land Use Review Standard says the Planning Commission, before acting on a special land use application, shall employ and be guided by standards which shall be consistent with and promote the intent and purpose of this zoning ordinance, and ensure that the land use or activity authorized shall be compatible with adjacent uses of land and natural environment. Well, Bass Lake's on one side, Rennie Lake's on the other, Brown Bridge is on the other, and Hobbs Highway's on one. So that's what the adjacent environment is. So what's it mean to be consistent with and promote the intent of the zoning ordinance? What's it mean to say that new land uses are compatible to adjacent uses? Well, we can look right over at Section 231 of the zoning ordinance, which defines a forest lake district. The inland lakes of East Bay Charter Township are a defining characteristic of the community. The township's future land use plan clearly establishes the protection of natural features as a key goal of the plan. That plan states, the citizens of East Bay Township will continue to enjoy the rural character of the community as manifested in the expansive views of the bay, the rolling hills, inland lakes and woods, The rural air character will be defined by clean lakes and streams, clean air, native wildlife, and the clarity of star-filled night skies. A central purpose of this comprehensive plan is the preservation of these valuable assets for current and future residents. The zoning ordinance also states that the intent of the accompanying Lakes Area District is intended to establish and maintain a low-intensity residential and recreational environment predominantly for single-family dwellings in accessible rural areas adjacent to the inland lakes of the township. So let's just go, that's the present, let's go to the future. You looked at the map, as Judy had mentioned, as far as the future land use map. And we go from lakes area to natural area preservation. That's what it says on the one I got off the web. Very low density on the future land use map, with GOREC being entirely in the natural area preservation. According to the township, future land use maps are guides to future zoning designations and broad policy decisions. The purpose of the Natural Area Preservation District is to preserve large tracts of land offering important wetlands, wildlife habitat, forest lands, and river valleys with as little disturbance as possible. This isn't according to me, this is what the master plan says. This isn't just cultural stuff, it's codified in our laws. So it doesn't seem to us like large-scale conferences, races, wedding venues, it seems like those uses run in direct contradiction to and violation of the township's ordinance, its master plan and future land use. So no special use can really trump these. And you go, many of us moved out here knowing the way of life we sought was protected by our local laws. This plan is a direct affront to that. We're not people who moved in next to an airport and then complain about airplane noise. We never would have moved in next to an event center. And it never would have been reasonable to believe one could ever move in next door to us. I just will leave with, I know we all have grandkids and kids and stuff, and when mine comes, she comes to the joy of Rennie Lake. And when I speak for this, I speak for the people in High Lake, Arbutus Lake, and this whole Forest Lake area. I think that they share a lot of that. And I know when my granddaughter comes and she sits there and she goes down by herself at 8 years old and catches frogs and goes out and does that and listens to the wind. She sat there and was listening to the wind. So it's pretty hard to get an 8-year-old to do anything but sit down and listen to the wind. It's extraordinary. And the wild and the nightlife there, the clear skies that are mentioned in here, we have those. And what was said earlier about with Brian is so true. We hear our neighbors, but you know what? As our neighbor, my neighbor across the street, I think they have 5 properties on the lake. And then she says, we settle all of our issues at the dock. And that's probably a way to see it. I see that changing the way of our life drastically when you have 500 guests. We're on private roads. People already meander down there. I don't know how we're going to keep that because everybody's curious. So they walk down all the roads. And all of a sudden we have a heck of a lot more people, and their dogs are coming in and go in. So I just want you to be aware of this. Our life will be totally changed. It's not the life that I signed up for when I bought it. So to think that my economic, the property's been good. I didn't buy it to make money on it, but I'm definitely didn't come to help subsidize a bad real estate deal after years and years and years for GOREC. I mean, basically, that's their real estate issue. No one ran to Kmart over an Acme when they ran on it. This is a real estate problem. That's what it is. If they are generous, they could give it away. It wouldn't be a problem at all. But this is an economic problem for GOREC. So let's not change all our land use to accommodate basically an economic issue. Because I don't think we all should have that. Because when it comes right down to it, that's what it is. It's an economic issue, and we're trying to skirt it as a zoning issue. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm wearing 2 hats again tonight, so please bear with me, but I'll be brief. My name is Ralph Bednars. I'm a lakefront property owner on Rennie Lake at 1380 Autumn Trail. You are aware of my professional background as a retired limnologist and a lake management expert. Tonight I want to comment on the importance of high-quality inland lakes to the nation, to the state of Michigan, and to the Forest Lakes area. Lakes provide numerous ecosystem and cultural services that support all aspects of our lives. Lakes with high water quality add significant economic value to lakefront properties and nearby homes, as well as bring significant tourism and recreation to lake communities. Yet, high-quality lakes across the U.S. continent are disappearing, a fate that is impacting ecosystem health and fish species as well as property values. Globally, freshwater lakes are losing biodiversity at twice the rate of loss for land or ocean vertebrates. It is imperative that the United States do more to conserve low-impact, high-quality lakes before they are diminished for future generations. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's 2007 and 2012 National Lake Assessments, NLA, confirmed what many lake professionals have noticed themselves, that healthy lake condition is declining. A recent study using 2007 and 2012 NLA data found that, quote, blue, unquote, lakes decreased by 18%, while, quote, unquote, murky lakes increased by 12% over this time period. The 2012 NLA found that only 10% of the nation's lakes remain as oligotrophic, the most valued clear-water, quote-unquote, blue lake types. Michigan participated in the NLA surveys and also found a decline of oligotrophic lakes in the state. These results emphasize the need for protective lakes management. This includes watershed and shoreline protection, as well as aquatic invasive species, AIS prevention. Rennie Lake continues to be classified as an oligotrophic lake, one of the 10% that are left in the nation. Although its trophic status is vulnerable given its size and average depth. It's a shallow lake. We all must work toward implementing best management practices to protect the water quality and ecosystem health of this high-quality lake. You can facilitate this by limiting the number and size of events at the GoRec facility and not allowing public watercraft access via the GoRec waterfront on Rennie Lake. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on the value of high-quality lakes and the need to protect them. Thank you. I'll leave a copy of this for the record with Preston. Thank you, Preston. And I'll put on my other hat now. Thank you. Again, my name is Ralph Bednars. I'm a lakefront property owner on Rennie Lake at 1380 Autumn Trail. I am representing the Rennie Lake Association Incorporated, the RLA, as its current president, and my comments convey the position of the RLA. I presented the RLA position on the GoRec PUD application at the public hearing on December 16, 2021, and at the following GoRec PUD application Planning Commission meeting on January 4, 2022. The RLA continues to disagree with the updated permit application regarding public watercraft access to Rennie Lake via the GoRec waterfront. Given the historical use as well as the risk of aquatic invasive species, AIS, infestation from the proposed public access of watercraft on Rennie Lake, the RLA asked the Planning Commission to, 1, limit all watercraft access to Rennie Lake via the GoRec waterfront to only GoRec's fleet of watercraft to be used exclusively on Rennie Lake. The township has the authority to regulate the waterfront and to limit multi-boat access sites under Lake Area District under Section 405.6 as per the January 25, 2020 memorandum from Peter R. Wendling, Legal Counsel to Claire Carner. Director of Planning and Zoning, Leslie Couturier, former zoning administrator, and Beth Friend, supervisor, which is included in your packet, page 29 to 37. Number 2, require wash station procedures to include drying. The broadly accepted standard for watercraft decontamination of AIS is clean, drain, dry. Number 3, require GoRec to sponsor an independent watercraft carrying capacity study before making any decision on the PUD application permitting public watercraft to be launched from the GoRec property. A watercraft carrying capacity study for Rennie Lake was previously agreed to by Jamie Lewis Hedges, GOREC Director, in his December 14, 2020 email to Claire Carner, Director of Planning and Zoning, which is also included in your packet on page 38 to 40. Tonight, the RLA additionally requests for clarification of the lawful nonconforming accessory uses at the GOREC facility approved by Leslie Coterrier in her May 26, 2021 letter to Jeffrey Jocks, Sundie, Racine, and Dorian, PLC, and Matt McDonald, Executive Director, Rotary Camps and Services. Specifically, Coterrier states, overnight guests can continue to participate in historical accessory uses, including, among others, canoeing, sailing, kayaking, rowing. These historical accessory uses do not specify between the use of watercraft brought in by the general public and the historical use of on-site watercraft that was the practice of the Boy Scouts for over 60 years at Camp Greilich. The reason this needs to be determined is that public watercraft is the main vector for AAS transport and infestation in Michigan's inland lakes. No public watercraft should be allowed on Rennie Lake via the GOREC waterfront. The Rennie Lake community's recommendation to GOREC management and Rotary Camps and Services on several occasions over the years has been to only rent human-powered watercraft at GOREC with use only on Rennie Lake, not cross-use on Bass and Spider Lakes or other water bodies. This is the practice the Boy Scouts followed for 6 decades at GOREC waterfront, and I'm not aware of any issues with AAS and Rennie Lake from this on-site watercraft use, nor overcrowding during their tenure. By allowing only GOREC's on-site watercraft and use only on Rennie Lake, both the number of watercraft and the ability to guard against AAS are controlled. I asked Township staff over a month ago, actually it was almost 2 months ago, for clarification on the allowed watercraft for these historical accessory uses. I finally received the response today, but it did not provide the clarification requested. The RLA respectfully requests that the Township Board intervene and require this clarification and specific documentation for the approval of the lawful unconforming accessory water uses. The RLA Board appreciates the opportunity to comment on the updated GOREC PUD application in front of you. I know there's not going to be a vote tonight, but if there was, we'd request a no vote on the PUD application, or to postpone your vote, which you have, until our concerns are addressed, as well as all of the concerns of the Rennie Lake community regarding GOREC's plan to open to the public as a commercial operation. The RLA thanks the commissioners for listening to our comments tonight and for your service to East Bay Township and the residents of the Forest Lakes District. Thank you.
Me again. Karen Smith, 1330 Cants Road. I just have a few questions still that remain from the PUDs. One is, when they have these 64 campsites, and those campers want to have their visitors, they call and say, hey, I'm camping here today. Is there going to be a number of people, dogs, cars allowed per each campsite? Were these visitors going to be considered day visitors, where they can come in and use the lake for no charge, or are they going to be charged as part of the campers, where the people have to pay to camp? There's just no, how many people can come per campsite? Can they have the dogs? Can they have cars? How many cars? Because, again, there's bears, wolves, all kinds of wildlife. If you bring a bunch of dogs, I don't know what's going to happen to your dog, truthfully, unless you have it on a leash. Another question from the original PUD, and it's still out there, states that Rennie Lake launch will be staffed and restricted in use. We still don't know how. Is that 24/7? Or how is that going to be staffed and restricted? Because Rennie Lake, Spider Lake, they are all sports lakes, which means high-speed boating is allowed between 11 and 7:30. So we have to stay 100 feet from all these people who want to be paddlers. I've heard people here complaining because they want to go paddle and there's motorboats out there. Well, we have the right also, as property owners who've been there doing this for 50 years, we legally should be able to use our own lake, not to have so many people on there paddling that we can't even go safely out and use it. One of the other things that Rotary and GOREC continue to state is that they're going to do nothing more than the Boy Scouts did, which we all know is ridiculous, because Boy Scouts had events. Yes, for 50 years we've been there. We know they had events, but they're not that size and that nature. I can promise you, the Boy Scouts did not go out in the canoes and drink. They did not throw garbage in the lake, or they did not use other lake owners' rafts, swim platforms. All, which I saw happen last summer. So, in the beginning, they say, continue to say, that they're going to do what the Boy Scouts did. They are not. It's just not, I'm not trying to be a lake owner who's a crabby person, but it's our lake. I'm picking the trash up out. I'm watching them swim off from people's rafts where it's not public property. It's our private property. So, as we've all voiced on many previous occasions, you know what the issues are. Excessively large event center and excessive lake use. We're not concerned about the day use for the bikers, hikers, camp, all those people. They continue to post that we are the reason that the day use is closed. And so it's really unfair to us as neighbors. They want us to be neighbors. They want to get along with us, but they're not even asking what our opinion is or how we feel about this. How many GOREC and or Rotary people have lost night's sleep over this? How many people have, from that side, can say our life will never, ever be the same on that lake again if you pass this PUD the way it is written? So that's what I'd like to say, and I do appreciate the work you do. Thank you.
My name's David Geyer. I'm on Scout Camp Road. A couple recommendations. I would listen to Ralph. He's got decades of experience. He can guide you with the water management, water clarity issues that are very, very important, as well as the wetlands that may be present on the property. Our new neighbor, maybe you could also take some of her counsel. It sounds like you guys are really trying to deal with things that you know, as a volunteer commission, would be really tough to get through. I guess I have to call GOREC on the poor form piece of blaming us, that we're trying to shut your property down to the public. That's offensive. It's a wrong way to mischaracterize.
Excuse me, sir. Can you direct your comments to the Planning Commission? Thank you.
I think you heard my comment. That's just not, I don't think that really fits the values of the Rotary as well. I think my last point is really a question for you. A lot of good discussion tonight, but I've heard nothing about what is the compelling goodness or the compelling benefit to the township for this PUD. I don't understand. Why are you feeling any pressure to make exceptions? I think the language tonight was used, we'd have custom ordinance for them. Why? What's the benefit to our township? What's the benefit to what we have almost 250 people that are against this? Because we live there, we pay all the taxes. What's the compelling good that you feel pressured to give them exceptions? It's not fair. To use a property like a commercial entity for large events does not seem in any way aligned with their mission of being pro-environment, outdoor education, and outdoor recreation. To describe a wedding reception as outdoor recreation is just silly. That's just silly. That's what's on their website. That's wrong. 400 people getting down at midnight in a lodge, that's not environmental education. That's not environmental recreation. That's a revenue maker. And we realize they need revenue, but as I understand, their history is they've made a lot of revenue on that property over the many years. So that's it. What we need to hear from you, if for some reason you would approve this, what is the good to the township? We see no good. Thank you.
My name is Judy Pelto. I live on Abbey Lane in East Bay Township. I think tonight has been really good in the sense of trying to pull together all the issues, because I very much sympathize with you with having all these packets from months and months and months, and then having to go through and the correspondence, because as a resident, I have a hard time doing that, and I have more time on my hands than probably you do. But I want you to really think about, I don't like the idea, or I'm nervous about the idea that somehow the PUD regulation gives you a rotating of yes, we can, and no, we can't, and you can make exceptions. Because I want you to think about the fact that this is a conservation easement we're talking about. It's not somebody's piece of personal property. It's a conservation easement. And I would hope that you would give a lot of consideration to that. I strongly support the idea that there should be a conservation assessment. The conservation easement that's dated August 28, 2020, states, "The conservation easement assures the property will be perpetually preserved in its predominantly natural, scenic, forested, and open space condition." The easement document talks specifically about enumerated conservation values. One of the values stated that states that the valued native forest lands exist on the property, which includes diverse native species, trees of many age classes, and structural diversity. Additionally, the easement document states changes in the property may be documented from time to time through a change condition report. The last report of current land uses and physical features of Camp Graylick conservation easement was done in 2003. The easement also specifically addresses forest management. It states, "A forest management plan is required prior to any forest management or harvesting is conducted and shall be provided to the Conservancy for review and approval. A site map must also be provided and removal done by a licensed forester. However, the Land Conservancy Easement Monitoring Report dated May 5th, 2021, stated that Gorek felled roughly 200 trees from the property last winter. Some of the trees were on the disc golf course. It also stated that the landowner asked what steps they should take, if any, regarding the felling of the trees." So that statement leads me to believe that the Land Conservancy was not notified of the intention to remove 200 trees, and that Gorek acted in direct violation of the Conservancy easement. Since neither the Land Conservancy nor Gorek is willing to make public all of the annual easement monitoring reports, we don't know if Gorek was made to take steps for remediation for the removal of the 200 trees. The fact these monitoring reports are not available and transparent to the public or township does not create a climate of trust. What assurances are there that other conservation easement restrictions, especially if you go ahead and approve a PUD, would be kept? The monitoring report also noted some parts of the disc golf course, on some parts of the disc golf course, it looked like foot traffic from players could be having an impact on vegetation. With significantly increased future usage, it seems logical there would continue to be increased impact on the vegetation. What steps are being taken to see this does not occur? A new inventory of all flora and fauna should be made, as well as any plans for future changes. Without previous monitoring reports, it is unclear when the disc golf course was installed, and it therefore does not necessarily fall under or should be viewed as a use of right. Since disc golf is a relatively new sport, it is unlikely it was part of the original easement. The summary of conservation values are stated as protection of large contiguous blocks of unfragmented forest. It is important for maintaining biological and genetic diversity, as habitat loss and fragmentation are often the most are often the major cause of population declines in both plants and animals. The mostly undeveloped nature of the property contributes to the water quality of the adjoining lakes by absorption and filtration of surface waters before they enter the lakes. The last public report of the current land uses and physical features of the property was in 2003, the date the easement was granted. Given its location and topography, the groundwater from the easement very likely contributes directly to the water resources of Rennie Lake, Bass Lake, Spider Lake, Spring Lake, and the Boardman River, which ultimately runs to the bay. Soil and groundwater tests should be done to determine the current state of ground and surface water. The use of the property for commercial purposes, such as an event venue, increasing camping areas, disc golf, etc., will ultimately result in increased noise, auto and bus traffic congestion, lake use, loss of habitat for plants and wildlife, decreased water quality, air pollution. Increasing campsites will contribute to all of the above, plus has the potential for increased possibility of forest fires. Approval for the PUD request also sets a precedent for future similar uses in the Forest Lakes area that will erode the natural beauty of the entire area, as well as have a negative impact on property values, which will destroy the reason people want to come and live here or visit here. An environmental impact study should be made before a decision is reached on the PUD request, so I'm supporting what you said. Thank you for your patience. You really do have my sympathy because you have a very tough job, but this is probably one of the most important decisions that you'll make, and I don't think there should be a hurry to rush to judgment.
Just so you know, we've been, so we're going close to our 5th hour of public comment on this issue. So if you recall, there was discussion, we had a public hearing back on December 16th. The last time, on January 4th, we had an hour and 15 minutes. Now we're approaching this 1 hour of comment. A lot of the comments we're hearing, just so you know, we've got a lot of comments in terms of letters. So I would ask you to be very concise at this point, because quite honestly, what you're doing is, in a lot of these comments, it's becoming very repetitive. We've heard it, we got your message, and it's almost, it's kind of run its course. So just letting you know. So you're welcome to talk, but I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Debbie Jordan. I live on Spider Lake and have been on Spider Lake since probably 1986, and we've owned a home on Spider Lake since 1988. And I have not heard all this stuff before, and I just do want to give some follow-up on it. I greatly respect the need for looking at how it affects the environment. I love the environment. I want to keep it, safe like everyone. But I think that what I want to say in just listening is we all heard how the population has grown in East Bay Township. And I think we need facilities and places for all these residents to enjoy this. And GoRec offers some of that. Those facilities, we all know old buildings, if they're not used, they deteriorate and fall down. These places need upkeep. They're beautiful, but they have to be used, or they're not going to stay that way, and that would be a great loss. I'm lucky enough to live on Spider Lake, and I get to enjoy it by living there. But there are many, many residents in East Bay Township that aren't lucky enough to live on a lake like many of us are. And I want to protect Spider Lake just as much as any other lake. But I think that the other residents here could, you know, it would be nice for them to have the chance to enjoy the facilities at GOREC. And I completely support everything that they're applying for. I've tried to read it in detail as much as possible. And I think that, you know, it was said something about noise until midnight and so on and so forth. But there is a lodge there. And, you know, things can be contained somewhat by a building. All the foliage also contains and absorbs sound. And I'm saying this because there is a venue on Spider Lake. It's Spider Lake Resort that also has weddings and receptions, and they actually have it right on the water. And they have never bothered me as far as sound or anything like that goes. They do have a time limit, you know, that they stop at. But I'm just saying that, you know, I know that stuff travels on water. I have heard, you know, my neighbors too. But that's when you're right at the water. It's not away from it or in a building. So I think you have to take that into consideration. And I also have walked the disc golf course. I don't disc golf, but I have walked it, and I don't know anything about setbacks. But I've never seen the lake from the disc golf course. And I was, you know, just walking it and looking around. So I don't know, you know, I'm sure things could be moved if that is the case. But certainly it wasn't like I felt like I was walking by the water. And I didn't even know that it was that close. I never saw it. And I didn't get the idea, I do look at social media, that anyone was trying to blame anybody for this closure of the daytime use. I didn't understand that to be that any group was, that was their fault. I knew that there's a group that didn't want a lot of the facilities used as they're being asked to use, but I didn't think that, I probably missed something that there was any blame there, so I feel bad about that. But, you know, like I said, I think people that need to be able to have a place to go. If our population has grown, they need a place to enjoy it too, and I think that would be perfect. And I think that, you know, being able to use the lodge, I mean, it's a big place, it's got a nice kitchen. I don't know what else you could use it for and how it wouldn't deteriorate if it wasn't in use for the size of, you know, group that it could accommodate. And, you know, maybe there needs to be some limits, of course, but I just want to say that I am in favor of you know, going ahead with their application. I hope that it will be accepted. My biggest fear is that if they can't make the revenue that they need to keep these buildings up and to keep this grounds up and their, you know, who knows what, the roofs and the furnaces and whatever, that this property will have to be sold. And I certainly would like this as my neighbor, you know, the GOREC property as my neighbor, as opposed to it being sold to a developer. And to me, there would be a lot more, you know, activity on that lake. I kayak and I have a motorboat. I've never had a problem. We all know Spider Lake is much more busy than Rennie Lake. It has a public access. I've never had a problem when I was kayaking with a motorboat. I've never on my motorboat felt, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of kayakers, I have to stay away. And so I just don't really see that as a problem. So I'm just expressing my support for GOREC and this application. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Bernardi. I live
on Rennie View Road in East Bay Township. I respect what you're saying about us. I know it's been a long road for all of us speaking, so out of respect to that, I'm going to not read this. No, I wasn't going to read this thing. There was, somebody's got to smile, somebody. There's legal precedent for your and the state's ability to enforce conservation easements. We submitted from our attorney that information in your packet. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I just want you to know that we do have legal standing, and please look at it in your packet. Our attorney addressed that. So the dismissing of the conservation easement, we legally can have that enforced. So please read that information in your packet, okay? Because it's very important to us. I have a couple comments other than my prepared statement, so I am going to really try to make this quick. It's about this evening's comments. We heard that there were some submissions late as far as testimonies. It's great to hear there are some testimonies. I hear one is from gentleman, Mr. Parker. He gave an affidavit, a statement about his longstanding work at GOREC or something. I have a question. Is that the same Pat Parker that is on the board of directors of the Rotary? Is he on the same Pat Parker that is on the board of directors of GOREC? And is that the same Pat Parker that is the fire chief that wrote the very lax fire plan? That's just a question I have. I'm not sure. I haven't been around here a long time, but I think that might be the same Pat Parker that wrote that information. So that's a question. That speaks to kind of transparency. As far as the documents that you want included in the packets for you to read, I ask you to include a lot of the comments from the public because we have done so much research. We have full-time jobs too, and we have done so much research to get to the facts about the laws that you actually do have to enforce, Mr. Leonard. And we've done this for days and weeks, and we actually know them now. So we've shortcut that for you. So if you look at the technical writings that we've put in your packets and that we've sent in, it will actually help you because we've quoted the zoning rules and what the PUD can do. And we know the open meeting rules, that you can't have meetings behind doors with the applicants and such. So if you want to include some of our submissions, we'd really appreciate that. The PUD does not give you broad stroke powers to change those laws in rules that are out there to protect things like forest lakes overlays and such. So please take the time to read those things because they are snippets of what applies in this case. They're for all of our edifications. The Peter Wendling memo, Mr. Leonard, that you questioned, I read that out loud in this very forum at one of the meetings, and we submitted it in the packet, so it would be sure to be submitted. So the information has been available. So I'm quite certain that everybody has had access to that memo, especially since I was the one that introduced it and read it out loud. If that answers your questions. Let's see. As far as any other, back to the issue on the Conservancy. Shame on the Rotary for convincing them to allow these things to happen, to bow to their need, their money grab on this. Shame on them. Shame on them. Because I believe the director of the Rotary Camps and Services mentioned in this room that he wrote that conservation easement, if I'm not mistaken. Another question, if my memory serves me correct. Okay. I came here today with something different in my head, though. I actually wrote this statement. I'll try to make it brief. But I wanted to make a point that was entirely different than this whole direction. And my point is that I think something's getting overlooked. And I think the Rotary is missing a huge opportunity here, a huge opportunity. And I think the respected Rotarian leaders have two choices, the way this thing can go. They do have two choices. They need to make the right choice, but it's right in front of them. They're not making the obvious right choice. They should be utilizing their enormous wealth and their stature in our community to stand on the rooftops right now and say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this place open for the community. We're coming out of COVID. People want to get outdoors. How many people on their side of this issue have said that it's the right thing to do? We want to camp, we want to hike, we want to do all these things. They need to do the right thing here and be the charitable leaders and lead the community in that direction. Instead, they're making the choice, the conscious choice, to go in this different angle. This different angle doesn't do anything for the environment. It still allows them to camp and hike and do all those things. So the end result there is the same. But instead, they're behind the scenes using their power and their wealth to push these things through. And, I mean, who in the world ever even thought this thing up? Who would have thought? I know what we'll do, even though it's protected by the Forest Lakes overlay, and it's in this district, and we've got a conservation, I know what we'll do. We'll open this commercial event center there because it kind of seems to be in vogue right now. We just listened to another one today. And we'll make money off of it. And we'll push this thing through, and then we'll not tell the people out there that we're trying to do this. We'll just say that we're just trying to open it up for everyone to use, and the neighbors are, squelching it. So, make no mistake, they are making this conscious choice to go this route as a money grab, okay? I'm trying to skip forward in an effort of time, so bear with me here. We have reached out to them personally. We have reached out to the directors, the higher-ups at the Rotary. We've reached out to GORAC, and we've tried to come to some agreement. They've ignored them. They've ignored us. They've just quietly said, speak to our attorney. We want to extend that again tonight. We want to come to some kind of neighborly agreement. Skip the events. Skip all that access to the lake for all these public boats and stuff. We all know what we want, right? You said it. We've heard it all before. We want them to make the right decision, do the right thing for the Bay Area. They're missing this opportunity. It's the right thing to do. Because why do they have to have one single wedding at that place for the trails to be open? Why does there need to be one event for somebody to cross-country ski? The land is owned free, right? They don't pay taxes, yada, yada, yada. They don't have any expenses other than upkeep. What more could you want from a business model? Free, 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 other than upkeep. I mean, the only thing you could dream of that could be better than that would be like if you had oil wells on the property. Oh my God.
How crazy would that be?
Right? So it's an accounting issue. It's a bookkeeping change. Somebody at the Rotary needs to do the right thing and say, you know what? Yeah, this is an accounting issue. They've got the last statement they published publicly, they had close to $50 million in reserves. They make $500,000 a year off the oil wells on the earth underneath those 500 acres. Make an accounting adjustment. Open it up for us. I want to hike the place. I'm a hiker. Okay? Do the right thing, Rotary. This all can go away. It doesn't have to be like their attempt to bring ships in, for God's sakes. It's the same director, by the way, that tried to bring the ships in at the port. Same guy. Same guy that left the room when we started talking. There's a pattern here. Make the right decision, do the right thing. And with that, I really thank you for listening. Please read the technical stuff that we've submitted. It's taken us a lot of time, okay? It's factual cutouts of the zoning rules. We've spent a lot of time, okay? It will shortcut your search. Thank you for everything you do.
Any other comments?
It's late, let's go home.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
The door that exits this parking lot out here, apparently their temperatures have dropped and there's a bit of an ice issue. I've thrown a ton of salt out there, but just be careful when you exit, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to other business before the Planning Commission. We have zoning amendment 1-22, combination of uses.
There was a formal request for a motion around another public hearing in light of all the changed scope in the application. We did want the Planning Commission to consider that.
Okay. Zoning amendment, if our people going to leave, or are they going to hang for the rest of the meeting? If you're going to leave, leave now. We'll give you a couple of minutes.
No. Does he know that's postponed? Does he know that's postponed till next meeting?
Careful driving home.
Please exit the room so we can continue.
Sorry about that.
So we have zoning amendment 1-22, combination of uses postponed to the March meeting, so that's nothing we really have to take action on.
Right, I didn't put anything in here because we
Yeah.
have no business, and we are gonna have enough business in March. We're gonna have enough business in March that do you want me to have something for March? I know that we don't wanna just keep putting it off, there's a reason you started talking about it, but there's 4 applications here, I have another application that's gonna end up on your March agenda.
Yeah, I think we should postpone it, quite honestly.
Okay, I mean.
Beyond March, I mean, I don't know if we're not going to have time to,
Right, I just
Focus
didn't know
on
if
it.
it was like an important thing you wanted to keep moving forward, or if it kind of can keep getting backburnered for a couple more months.
Is that something they were trying to get done soon, to change that? No?
No.
PGOs.
Well,
PGOs, right?
yeah.
That was one.
Is that what it was?
Oh, that's right, that was PGO, okay.
Yeah.
They don't have an application in for the amendment,
I
but.
think they're waiting for
Right,
us.
that was the reason I
Yeah.
think we started talking about it.
Right, so, yeah, okay, I forgot about that.
And
So,
Changed it for the size.
The dwelling unit size, yeah.
Yeah.
so that's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, correct? So can we just get that, why don't we do the intro and then set the public hearing for April then?
Yeah,
With-
I'll get it together for an intro then.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can put it maybe at the beginning of the agenda and just deal with it kind of quickly.
Yeah, let's just deal with it, because we know that they're waiting for it. Okay. Do we need a motion on that or anything? No?
I don't think so.
no.
Okay, cool. Next is public comment. Anybody have any public comment?
Seriously?
Okay. Updates from planning commissioners. Sorry, okay.
Is this public comment on just anything at all?
Yes.
My name's Molly DeBell, and I live on Tranquil Point Road on Rennie Lake. And I guess my comment is, this is the first time I've ever been to one of your meetings, and I do realize that this is a very complicated situation, and there are lots of issues and lots of opinions, but I honestly get the feeling, watching the meeting take place, that I kind of feel like your minds are already made up. And I really kind of feel like the public's concern about things going on in the township, no, I can't really say that I think it's really being given due consideration and really being taken seriously. So I guess that's just my comment. And so I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, and I see you shaking your head over there, Renee, so I hope I'm wrong. But that's the feeling that I get tonight, that kind of like your minds are already made up, and that, John, you were talking about, we've heard it all before, and I know you probably are tired of hearing it all over again, but I feel like it matters to people. It really, 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 really matters to people, and I don't think it's really being taken that way. So that's my public comment.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll move on. Updates from planning commissioners? Any comments, updates? Okay, next meeting date is March 1st, 2022, regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
John, would there be any interest in starting the meeting earlier than 6:30, since we have like 2 public hearings and 5 applications?
Do we have any site plan?
The
We
one
did-
we just received today, I haven't even looked at
Okay.
it. That would be the only new site. So I can't really tell,
So that would be a site review.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
could
know
be at
what
5,
the
right?
I don't know enough about it to be able to say, hey, it's gonna be, you're gonna have more than one meeting on it, so you could do it the next time, or,
Right.
that part of it.
If we did it
I'm
at
just
5,
concerned
then
about time
meet
for
at 6.
all of it.
I'm not going to be here.
Okay. Do we know if anyone else is going to be? I hate to ask that in advance.
So what if we bumped it up 1 hour, 5:30? Would that work?
Yeah,
for-
If we have a site plan.
Well, it should only be 1, right?
Right.
So if we did it at 5, and then we go right,
5:30.
we'd go right into the meeting here once we get back, because usually site visit doesn't take longer
Yeah.
than a half hour. Yeah.
Fine with me.
Yep.
Okay, let's bump it up 1 hour to 5:30. We'll do, if their site visit comes in, or that site plan comes in, we'll do a 5 o'clock site visit and then come right into here, go into meeting. All right.
Does that have to, we need to publicize it.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's, our resolution for meeting times is at 6:30, so would this be considered a special
I guess we
meeting?
would treat it as a special meeting, but we can get it posted, that only is 18 hours, but.
Yeah, I
we can
just
get it posted right
need
away.
to,
Yeah.
that's a technical thing that I don't want to get hung up.
Absolutely, we can get it updated and on the website and all of that, and then the public hearing notices would have that right time in it, so. You can post that on the bulletin board for me. Thank you.
Also
Okay.
move that we have the next meeting at 5:30 on March 4th.
Okay. Motion, is there a second?
I'll support.
Okay, motion to have the start time for the March 1st meeting at 5:30 PM. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And we come to adjournment. And we have a motion to adjourn.
Also move we adjourn at 10:10.
Okay. We're adjourned.
Everybody be